Self-destruct sequence activated.
3, 2, 1.
Hey gang, it's TimothyPaul out here on Ustream and on Paltalk.com. Welcome. It's 2 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, and it's, I believe it's about 1600 hours UTC. This is our first pilot show here on Ustream and Paltalk, so we hope you enjoy it. Sit back and watch the show or listen to the show or interact with the show, whatever way you want to go there. But I think you watched our previous videos and you got a pretty good insight of what's going on here. We're bringing in a couple people here in a second. We got Mr. Mike and Mr. Relic going to join us here in a second. My name is Timothy Paul. You can find us on Paltalk.com under the education category. If you find out where Paltalk is there, you just go to Paltalk.com, obviously, and you go to education category, and we're right down in there. We're the Truth Seekers Room, and we are here trying to find the truth. With no further ado, we're going to get right in the show here just after about a couple seconds here so I get everything straightened out. Hope you enjoy the show once again, and here we go. Well, hello there, Ustream, and hello there, Paltalk. This is Timothy Paul. We're here today with Mike and Relic. Let me see if I can bring these guys up. You guys on the line here? You got your volumes turned up there? Can you hear me okay?
Hey, Timothy.
Hey, there's Relic. How you doing? Mike?
How you doing, Tim?
Hey, we got
Relic.
Mike. Good deal. Hey, Relic, you want to start off? You can kind of let everybody out here on the net know what the heck we're all about and where we're going to go with this topic today.
Yeah, it's such a deep topic. You know, it's kind of hard to find out exactly where to start. We're going to try to keep this as non-technical as we can and try to simplify things. As many of y'all know, on March 12th, we had a M-class solar flare impact Earth. Something else very extraordinary happened on March 12th. Any of you that keep up with what's going on with the sun and the magnetic field and everything are aware that there was an apparent reversal, for lack of a better term. Now, I've said this in past shows and past videos. I don't like using the term reversal because that implies a pole flip to a lot of people, and that's not what we think happened. There seems to be two camps out there. You've got the institutions and the doctors and scientists who will tell you that it was a glitch in data. That's why the data on some of the sources and sites that we look at is no longer available in some places, while the sites were down. And they're also blaming it on a phenomenon that's been known about since the mid-90s called a hot flow anomaly. Now, the other camp, a lot of the researchers out here are of the opinion that we're not being told the entire truth, that the data looks good to us. It not only looks good, it looks pristine. I've been into electronics and computers and this sort of stuff for a very long time. I've seen a lot of data plots. When I think of bad data and I look at a bad data plot on a graph, I expect to see numbers off the chart, no numbers at all, and when that's plotted out on a chart, I expect to see straight lines, no lines, missing data, or spikes in data that just don't make no sense.
Hey, Relic, give me a second here. Let's pause right at that point there. Let's explain to people out here that don't know what we've been doing out here. As far as there was a bunch of us in our Paltalk room here, in our research room, we've been watching a bunch of stuff happen with the sun, with the solar, the sunspots, and the coronal mass ejections and everything. We've been following this for quite a while. A lot of people are interested in what's going on with the sun and things like that. And there's been a lot of predictions of people made that there's going to be a lot of earthquakes and all this stuff. So it kind of roused our curiosity. So that's really how we all started out, by doing a lot of research. It happened way back during the Elenin time. You want to give us like a fast forward recap from that, really?
Yeah, I can try. I guess everybody's pretty much aware about the whole Elenin PSYOP thing that never came true. Well, that got our attention, and I joined the research group back in July of last year. I had been researching 2012, the possibility of a Planet X, and been studying the sun for quite a long time. But then this put me into full gear. Since then, I've dedicated all my time because I find this so intriguing. So, this is one reason why we've been watching so much solar activity, to see, we were expecting Elenin, and then Elenin didn't happen. After a while, most of us in Truth Seekers research realized that this was not going to happen, that it was disinfo and false information. So, but nonetheless, we continue to study the sun and other things. And for people who may not know, the sun goes through a solar cycle every 11 years, and we are coming up to a solar maximum. That's why you're starting to see a lot of things in the news, in the mainstream news especially, about solar flares and solar storms. And just to maybe simplify it a little bit, I'm sure it's kind of hard to picture these things in your mind, but anybody who's ever seen pictures or have witnessed the northern lights, the auroras, you're seeing a direct effect of the sun interacting with our magnetic field. So that is something that you can see and, with your senses. So that, that's not so abstract. But what makes March 12th so special is, as long as, not just us, but everybody out there, and there's a lot of people out there watching and studying the sun besides NASA and the universities. There's a lot of independent researchers. We've never seen an event like what we've seen on March 12th. And we'll get into that in a moment. But did that kind of cover where we started, why and when we started our research, and what got us into that?
Yeah, that kind of brought us up to speed. I'm getting a little bit of echo off here.
Sorry.
That's just Skype, no problem there. Yeah, that kind of brought us up to speed. We're just a research group on Paltalk that are interested in in the cosmos out there and what the sun's been doing. Like you said, we're reaching our solar maximum here pretty soon. That means that the sun's real active, got a lot of sunspots on it. It affects our Earth here. Like you said, it creates a lot of auroras when we get these blasts off the sun. You've all heard about them, something called a CME, a coronal mass ejection, and all that stuff. A great big, like a bomb going off on the sun. It spews all this stuff out into space, and some of that stuff comes crashing toward us, and that's how we see the northern lights. So it causes that plasma that shows that red and green and all that swirly stuff up there at the North and South Pole. So that's pretty much, we've been watching a lot of that stuff, and we've been watching data flowing from NASA and stuff like that. We watch graphs and all that stuff, and most of the time the graphs are pretty boring. So we just sit there and we check them out. We check them out with everybody and ask them if they see anything strange or any anomalies or stuff like that. And if they see something that we kind of think that's something of interest, we go and check it out. So that's pretty much what we've been doing. But now we come up on March 12th, and that's where Relic can explain in more detail what happened or what started to happen on March 12th. So go ahead, Relic, and take it from there.
Okay. First of all, do you have, can you bring up and pause one of the magnetosphere simulations and possibly show it in a normal state?
I can't pause it. I got a couple of the videos that once they start playing, they go full out.
Okay.
I got the one of the event that happened on March 12th that I'll be playing that we can kind of watch that when you're ready for it, but I can't pause it on this particular software here.
I gotcha. We'll get to that video in a minute, but I'm sure a lot of you have who do study the sun or even check into it or have watched videos from people like Suspicious Observer or Mr. Comet Watch or Dr. Keith Strong. And I put out some videos too when there's major solar events, and you see the magnetosphere, and you see this graph, and you see a bow shield. Some call it a sheath, some call it a shield.
Yeah, it's almost like a wave or like a breaker wall at sea or something like that, like a seawall or something out there kind of protecting us from these big waves coming in.
Right. It's kind of like a firewall too when you think about it. And if you want to, I hate using Star Trek terms because it makes it sound so unscientific and science fiction, but it's not science fiction.
I like Star Trek.
I love Star Trek. But you can think of it as like the shields on the Enterprise under attack. Well, when the Earth is under attack from the sun, that shield that you're seeing on the real-time magnetosphere simulation is Mother Earth protecting us with the magnetic field. The magnetic field, the Earth generates that itself. It emanates from its core. It's like one huge electromagnet. It deflects, just like the Starship Enterprise, using that analogy. It deflects all these radiation particles, the hot solar wind, and everything that the sun is throwing at us. Now, when you look at that graph, you always see the wind blowing in one direction. The sun is usually on the right, and you'll see the shield or the bow on the right side of the Earth. In the middle of those graphs, you'll usually see a little dot. It is half white and half black. The white side represents the day side of the Earth, the side of the Earth that faces the sun. The dark side of that little circle represents the night side. Well, especially during a solar storm, and even when there's not a storm, you'll see that shield interacting with the solar wind, and it'll light up various colors, which indicates how much pressure and temperature and a magnitude of other things that are going on at that boundary right there, at that shield. We have never it is unprecedented for any of us out here to see that shield on the back side of the Earth. Now, think about that for a minute and what that implicates. That happens during a solar storm. If you've got the sun throwing stuff at us during a M-class flare, which is a medium-sized flare, we have experienced X flares, which are, they chart them B, C, M, and X are the worst. So, an M1.4 is not, it's nothing to laugh at, but it's a moderate storm. But what we saw on the night of the 12th at around 16:30 UTC, and just to let you know, the space agencies deal in universal time. So just about anything you look at, when you look at the times on these data plots and the raw data and the graphs, you're going to be looking at timestamps that are dealing in universal time. At about 16:30 UTC on March 12th, what seems to have happened is there was a force from the backside of the Earth that managed to light up and make the magnetosphere accept, and it interacted with a force from the opposite direction. It's as if the big bad wolf was blowing the opposite way, and it took it a little bit of time, but eventually, for 28 hours, what the data tells us is that for 28 hours, there was a wrestling match with some other opposing force that pushed back that solar wind. Now, I don't know if I got too technical, so if you want to maybe expand on that, Tim, you're pretty good at keeping things simplistic, and for during the show, I would like to try to keep things as simplistic as we can, and not try to get too technical.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to keep things simple, but like you're saying, we normally get a nice breeze coming from the sun, if you want to look at it in simple terms like that. And we watch it when it picks up. The wind gets pretty gusty out there sometimes and really picks up. But this particular solar wind travels at an extremely high rate of speed, so it's like you're in a hurricane all the time pretty much. So it's pretty obvious. You can see this happening, and we have a lot of satellites that pick that up, and we watch all these plots and graphs and everything, and we keep an eye on that stuff to see if anything weird's going on. But like you said, on March 12th, we just happened to be watching it, just another normal day in the neighborhood here, and we was watching it, and all of a sudden, we saw something that just didn't look right to us whatsoever. We saw the, what do you call it, relic, the magnetopause there? We saw that great big blocking action from the Earth. That big shield out there did a complete 180-degree flip to the other side, and we're like going, did we just see what we just saw? Or like scratching our head going, what's going on here? This doesn't look right. So we caught that, and then all of a sudden, what was that, a few minutes later, that everything went black on us, Relic? Everything kind of shut down when we stopped receiving this data coming in?
Actually, the data continued to come in. A lot of people caught it. I wish I was there at the moment so I could have caught it as well.
But the particular site we was on, didn't that site go down, but the other sites that other people were looking at still maintain that data flow? Is that what happened?
Into the late night of the 13th, this was still going on, and I think the servers actually went down for 2 to 3 hours then.
Okay.
But data was still archived, imagery and raw data.
Okay, so it was still coming in. We just kind of lost it on our end there.
Well, they lost it after the fact, and that's provable because a lot of YouTubers and researchers that put out videos had a portion of that data that was no longer there. By the time I found out about it, I went back to look at those dates, and the data was gone. Some of the sites were down.
Right.
But you could still find footage of this stuff. So we've been very, very busy for the past 2 weeks trying to reconstruct the entire event. And I'm proud to say that, I take no credit for this. This was a lot of people that were trying to put this data back together. And we've now got a full picture with only about 2 hours missing. And we'll show that video shortly.
Yeah, right. What happened that we thought was so strange and weird, we've never seen it happen before, like we said, when that wind, for lack of better terms there, when the wind flipped and started coming from the opposite direction, it was just as strong, if not stronger at that point, than it was when it was facing toward the sun. So in a blink of an eye, we saw ba-boom, the wind started coming from the opposite direction, and we're going, okay, what's causing this? What happened out in space to cause the wind, solar wind? Well, you really can't call it solar at that point. What caused this wind to do that 180-degree flip? What's out there causing this to happen? So that really got our curiosity aroused. It's like, okay, what's causing this? So we just started chasing that question in our mind to find out what was causing this. And then all hell kind of broke loose there, where we started losing data. Things started going down, and we're looking at stuff, and we're looking at these graphs, and all of a sudden these graphs just kind of cut right off on the data stream. What did you say? That was about 2 or 3 hours later, Relic?
I'll have to look at the exact timestamp, but I think it was into somewhere during the evening or the night of the 13th.
Yeah, I remember you talking about that. I don't know the exact time that it went down. I mean, you was watching it. You kept track of the time real well there. But
yeah,
what happened with us is we're kind of freaking out, going, okay, what happened out in space? Something out there has caused this to happen. And that really kind of set off alarms in everybody. I think everybody out there on the internet was watching this probably thought the same thing. It's like, okay, what's causing this? What's going on out there? So everybody started focusing on the other side of the Earth, on the dark side of the Earth at that point, looking out in space to see what was out there. And we started looking at news streams. We started looking at NASA sites. We started looking at every available means we had possible to find out if anybody was updating what was going on out there in space. So that's kind of the point we're at right now. So go ahead and take it from there.
Are you back?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. It's kind of strange that we're talking about this, and I just want to let this out. I think I just lost my call because I'm being hammered with packets right now.
I still hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
I hear you perfectly. Your audio's been perfect all along. Keep going.
Anyway, I was just going to, I think we left off with the, there was about 2 or 3 hours of missing data that we never did recover, and I think that the instruments were not picking up data at that time. But we have constructed most of the event, and that video is out on YouTube. Other people probably have it now, and we will show that video here in a little bit. But I did think of another analogy that might help some people who are still maybe scratching their heads and saying, what are they? Kind of picture yourself on a windy day on the beach, and you got an umbrella, okay? And you're getting pelted by the sand, and you're getting stung. So you turn your umbrella toward the wind to shield yourself, okay? Imagine that as our magnetic field for just a second. And imagine that what you're being pelted with in that strong breeze is the solar wind, or in this case, a solar storm. Now imagine all of a sudden you have a breeze, the force of a hurricane, come from the opposite direction So what do you have to do? You have to turn your shield around to protect yourself from 180 degrees backwards. You have to turn around and guard yourself from the backside. And then
which in turn exposes the sun side right now, right?
Well, I wouldn't really say it exposes it, but it would be just an educated guess of mine, and this is where other people might be able to help, with their opinions and, any people who may chime in later. I would think that if the magnetosphere was focusing all of its attention on protecting Earth from whatever was coming from behind, then it seems reasonable to say that it's possible that we were weaker on the side that was being hit with a solar storm. Now, I'm not saying that there was no magnetic field, but I would imagine that the magnetic field was not nearly as strong as it should have been due to the fact that it was being attacked or bombarded by an opposing force from the other side.
Right.
And that's where the argument lies.
Right. So the sun side was still doing its job pretty much.
Right.
Blocking us from all the harmful rays and all the harm that could come from the sun if we didn't have that up there. So the sun side of our Earth was doing just fine pretty much at that point. But
which is amazing.
But whatever happened on the opposite side of the Earth was, imagine just a standard breeze blowing out the water, like we're using that analogy, and then all of a sudden we got a hurricane coming in behind us, blowing the opposite way. Now we got this energy coming from the opposite way that is just totally dwarfing the energy coming from the sun, the solar wind coming toward the Earth from the sun. So now we got this massive storm of some sort hitting us from the backside. So that's pretty much what happened there.
And I'd like to point out one other. There's going to be a lot of small facts that come up, and they'll probably come up as we get into this more and more. But right at the time that we started experiencing that opposing force, the solar wind and the temperature out there jumped to a level that I'm not saying it's never been seen before, but many of us out here who have been watching solar events for quite a while have never seen solar wind speeds this high.
Right, when that wind picks up that high out there like that, and the Earth is protecting itself, it creates. You can almost think of it like friction, where it's starting to heat things up, and that's what he's talking about there. It's like you can almost imagine it glowing red in the dark from all the resistance there from trying to protect us. It's getting warmer and warmer and warmer because it's protecting us more and more and more. For a real simplistic term, so it just keeps heating up, heating up, heating up. So what you saw out there was what temperature did you read there?
The last recorded temperature before there was. Right at the time of that opposing force, when it arrived, the wind jumped to over 800 kilometers a second. I have never seen that before. And the ionospheric temperatures jumped. The last highest temperature from the raw data, I'm not looking at a graph here, this is numbers and math, raw data, 8.3 times 10 to the 5th power Kelvin.
And what does that equal approximately in Fahrenheit, just for people that don't do the Kelvin conversion here?
I don't have a Kelvin to Fahrenheit conversion calculator. I'm sure I can probably bring that up if you give me a second.
If somebody out there in the audience here on Paltalk knows the answer to that, if you got a conversion and you could input there in text or approximately what that is. And what was that power again? It was 10 to the what?
8.3 times 10 to the 5th.
8.3 times 10 to the 5th. If anybody
you threw me a trick question, Timmy.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
I know. But I'm sure somebody out there can give us a quick answer. There's all kind of calculators. If you just Google Kelvin to Fahrenheit conversion, uh,
Choose your side. Join the battle. Star Wars, the Old Republic. Rated T.
you can probably easily type that in. That would be 8.3 with 5 zeros. And either convert that to Fahrenheit or Celsius.
Yeah,
But you're talking about surface of the sun temperatures. But now that being said, okay, everybody's saying, "Oh my God, that's hot." No, don't freak out. The atmosphere out there is it's so thin and wispy that you got to remember there's only a few particles per cubic centimeter. Whereas down here, where the atmosphere's thick, down here at the ground, if we had temperatures like that down here, yeah, everything would be vaporized. So you're saying, okay, well, how did this not, fry satellites and burn up the International Space Station? You're probably thinking all kind of things like that, but you got to consider that, yes, the temperature was that high, but only high to those very few particles. And like I said, that was very thinned out and wispy. So it's not like everything out in that area would have got fried to a crisp. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we just got somebody in the room that just posted a temperature here. Big Bone Jim posted a temperature here of 14,939,540 degrees Fahrenheit, if that's correct.
Well, that's what the last data plot showed.
So if that number there is correct, it went up to 14, almost 15 million degrees out there. And that's a little hot.
I could expect that during a bad X flare, but considering this was a M1.4 flare, I find those temperatures and that solar wind speed to be phenomenal.
Yeah, let me also say too, as we're going on here, we're trying to go step by step, folks, leading up to where we're going with this. So, I'm hearing background noise there. Anyway, we're leading up to where we're going here, so please have patience, and we're just going to go step by step for the people that don't quite understand this. We're trying to make it as simple as possible. Go ahead, Relly.
Where do you want me to pick up?
Okay, now we're up to about what? About 15 million degrees out there, and this wind's just blowing like crazy. Now what happened after that?
Well, now, assuming that all the data is correct, which we think it is, and like I said, there's two camps. And the other camp says, nah, garbage data, nothing to see, go back to sleep.
Yeah, and we also checked other sites for their data, too. We started looking all over the place to see what other people were saying, by the way. We're not just relying on a few data sites there. We was checking with a whole bunch of people at this point to find out if they're seeing what we're seeing.
Yeah, and let me also say that we weren't relying on YouTube science either.
Yeah, we wasn't checking out all the latest YouTube videos, that's for sure. But some really good ones came down the pike later on. But we'll get into that later too. So go ahead. What happened after the 15 million degrees there?
Okay, so here's the amazing part. After that, okay, imagine you've got this solar storm coming and bombarding Earth. Okay. Then the solar wind jumps, the ionospheric temperature jumps to the, what did y'all calculate it out to be, almost 14 million Kelvin?
Yeah, about 15 million Fahrenheit, something like that. Give or take a couple thousand degrees.
Right. Okay, so then what happens is you see a total flow reversal, as if the sun was blowing from the other side. It's like a wrestling match between the sun and something else.
Wasn't it jumping back and forth for a couple of seconds?
Yeah.
Like switching back to the sun side and then switching back to the dark side again?
Right. It's like the the Earth didn't know which side to protect. It was like in a wrestling ring with two boxers, and it's like, do I put my guard up on this side, or do I turn around and put my guard up on the other side? Because I'm getting hit from both directions here. Well, there was a flip-flop there. I think within a 16-minute period, it was observed to flip at least 4 times. But the opposing force, this is what is so intriguing. The opposing force, after about 30 minutes, 45 minutes of this, it won the battle. And it pushed back the solar wind for 28 hours.
It pushed the wind back for 28 hours.
What do we know of that can wrestle the sun and make it look like the biggest wimp and push back the solar wind, reverse our magnetic field lines, and have flow in the direct opposite direction for 28 hours? This might be a good time to anybody who's on the Ustream feed. This might be a good time to play the reconstructed data so that people can see what happened.
I want to inject something. I got a video up here on Ustream, right? Not a video, but I got a picture up here on Ustream of the sun at the time before this happened and at the time during this event that happened. So now we know this massive hurricane from somewhere out in space won the battle between the sun and itself. Now we're getting all this force, this power coming from somewhere out in the galaxy. Okay, now I want to inject these little sub-topics here. What was happening on the sun was the sunspots that were going on. We've had some solar blast on the sun, some CMEs. We had an X-class flare. We had another one that was an X-class flare is like one of the biggest flares you can get, massive flare. Then we had another one, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that we had another one that was close to X-class. And what class was that? Was that an M class?
If I'm not mistaken, if Delta's in the room, he might be able to confirm, but if I'm not mistaken, that was an M1.4 that we experienced that night.
M1.4? The one I know, I think the second one was close to being an X. It was very close to being an X class. X1.1, somebody just typed in the room. And then there was the other one. There was a bigger, wasn't there like an X7 or something like that, the first one? There was a huge blast. Anyway, this has been...
That's not on that particular night.
Okay, yeah, right. Not on that particular night, but leading up to this night. But,
right.
But something very strange was happening on the sun. People that have looked at the sun or studied the sun, they know what a coronal hole is. Explain what a coronal hole is, Relic, the best you can there. And I think you know where I'm going to take this here.
Well, again, this is where we could use some of the researchers to help chime in. I'm not a total expert on coronal holes, but I don't know, what's the best way to explain this? Well, you have the picture up.
Right, I get the picture of that.
You see
massive...
the dark, it sort of looks like a triangle. How they're formed, I'm not totally sure, but they do put out a steady stream of particles in solar wind. It's kind of like getting a moderate flare, but that's continuous. You know, a flare erupts, it arrives a few days later, unless it's the next flare, and then those can arrive, you know, in as little as 8 hours. They hit and they come and they go. You know, they're fairly short events, but when you have this big of a coronal hole, that this one's called a trans-equatorial because it crosses the sun's equator.
This particular coronal hole that we looked at, we have somebody in the chat room. Causic, thank you.
and I do think he is correct. It's formed by a large magnetic field that pushes the sun's atmosphere away. Thank you, Causic. So, basically what you have then is, instead of a abrupt solar storm that lasts for, an hour, 2 or 3 hours, you have this constant strong breeze. But it's still not going to, in my opinion, now this is my opinion, in my opinion, it's still not going to account for the temperatures and the 800 plus kilometers per second wind that we saw happen on March 12th.
Okay, I'd like to comment on that coronal hole, because what I'm about to say has significance to it. A lot of people look at coronal holes on the sun, and they look like just kind of different shapes, oblong shapes, different patterns. There's no real pattern to them per se. What we saw, what I was looking at, and what other people were looking at, maybe they didn't see it the way I did, but I'm looking at this massive coronal hole, and this coronal hole is in the shape of an isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle is a triangle that has two equal angled sides that two angles are equal. So it's like looking at a dunce cap, for one way of saying it. There, this coronal hole was almost perfectly shaped like a triangle, like an isosceles triangle. So I paid attention to that, and I'm the one out here just looking at all this stuff kind of neutral, because I'm not a scientist. I don't know much about space. I'm just observing this stuff, writing it down, taking notes. Just stuff looks out of the ordinary to me. So go ahead and pick it up from there, Relic. Just remember that triangle shape.
Well, I it's pretty hard not to miss that triangle. And the first thing I thought is, how often is it that you see perfect geometric shapes in nature, especially when you're dealing with magnetic lines of flux? I know you know electronics well. I know electronics well. You know radio frequencies and magnetic fields well, and I have a pretty firm understanding of those too. They can be very erratic. Now, as Causic pointed out, this coronal hole, it was largely created by magnetic field lines, a magnetic disturbance on the sun. Well, that being said, when you understand how erratic magnetic lines of flux can be, and then when you also realize that it is very odd to see something like an isosceles triangle in nature, it almost looks man-made.
Right, that looks weird, because you can literally see almost perfectly shaped angles in that triangle shape in that coronal hole. If you're looking at the picture I'm looking at, if you're on Ustream right now looking at this, it's got a little chunk out of the right side there a little bit, but if you look at the geometry of that, that's almost a perfect shape of an isosceles triangle. And we're going, how can this be? How can the sun form something like that? And that's it's kind of mind-boggling. How can it do this? Is this just me looking at it like it's a triangle, imagining that's a triangle? Am I seeing things? Am I making this up? But the more I looked at it, and then I'd come back and look at it again, I'm looking at a triangle. I mean, to me, anybody that would look at that shape would say that's a triangle. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's an isosceles triangle. So go ahead.
Yeah,
Really.
and this was an exception. Causic also pointed out one thing that I'll just, is it okay if I quote you? Just from chat, Causic? I guess it is. He brings up a good fact. Trans-equatorial coronal holes are typically something you see on the northern side rather than on the southern side. And another thing he mentioned out, and yes, he's right about this. This was a particularly enormous, absolutely enormous, cone-shaped, triangle-shaped coronal hole.
That was huge.
Yeah, it was enormous.
Enormous corona hole. And this
So,
hole, this hole was there before we started picking up all this other strange stuff.
So we haven't, we've just started to touch on what happened on March 12th, and already we've got so many strange things that just don't add up.
Lots of questions in our mind.
Lots of questions already, and we haven't even gotten to the data yet.
Right, we haven't got to. We're not even a quarter of the way through this yet.
Right.
Okay, let's pick it.
I'm just curious. Is there anybody standing by who might could have their scientific opinion, or I mean, I can go on, but I was just wondering if you had anybody in the queue that would like to chime in. If not, I'll go on.
Yeah, go ahead. We can Kevin, if Kevin wants to come in, we could probably add him into the conference there if he wants to come in.
Yeah.
Is Mike still in here? Mike, you still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, good deal. You're awful quiet over there, buddy.
Well, I'm just sitting here listening to letting Relic, you and Relic trying to explain what has been going on, and I don't know exactly where you're going with it, and what research I've done with this thing is...
What have you done with it, Mike?
Well,
in fact,
I've been looking at what NASA and a lot of the scientists has seen happen, and they've given an explanation for it. And I've been trying to compare that to what actually happened. Now, they've seen this happen. I think the first time it was recognized was back in 84, 85. And it's called, they call it HFA, hot flow anomaly.
Right, that's been thrown around out there a lot, that HFA. I remember us when we got that message about HFA, so we researched it. Go ahead.
Yeah, and trying to put that together with what happened, this hot flow anomaly that they call it, is, well, it's, to me, I don't know what the ramifications would be here on Earth when it goes off, because what I've been understanding and finding out that it releases so much energy, which you would think about it, it would have to release so much energy to cause all the solar winds to do a 180-degree flip and take off back towards the sun. Now, what would the ramifications be? I noticed they've noticed it several times on the surface of Venus. Now, when the hot flow anomaly occurs on Venus, it has no protective shield around it like Earth does. I'm going to call it the magnetosphere, and it actually takes place right down close to the surface of Venus. It'd be like a huge, I would want to say I'm going to make this analogy, a huge bomb going off on the surface, and actually turns the solar winds completely around 180 degrees and sends them right back towards the sun. Now, being said that, what would the ramifications be here on Earth? I mean, if it happens on Venus right down on the surface, I understand our atmosphere actually goes out quite a ways from Earth, but would there be any signs of this anomaly happening? What would be the signs of it? That's what I'm asking. I mean, I haven't got into it that deep.
Yeah, I don't really know what they are either. I mean, outside of when that person contacted us and was talking to us about these HFAs, these hot flow anomalies, I've never heard of one. I don't know if Relic's heard of them or not, and we were kind of dumbfounded. We didn't really know what they were, so we researched them a little bit to kind of bring us up to speed what they were and how they would relate to what's going on that we're seeing. In fact, I'd like to give kudos to you because you're the one that found that data for us that night. And
yeah, Mike found a lot of the missing links.
Yeah, he sure did. Did a yeoman's job there. He found some real good information for us.
And the other night, me and Mike did have a talk about these HFAs, or high flow anomalies. One thing to keep in mind, Mike, is that Venus does not have a magnetic field, so the effects on Venus would be a lot more severe,
right,
than, say, here on Earth. And I didn't read into it. I read up enough just to get a basic understanding of what they are, but I could be wrong about this, but from my understanding, it makes the outer layers of the atmosphere, the thermosphere, puff up, kind of like when you put a marshmallow over a fire.
Yeah, we just got a comment in the room to it. Phone home. We go by nicknames on Paltalk, by the way. For those of you that don't have Paltalk, we use nicknames out here. So if you hear me mention strange names, that's what we go by, just nicknames. Gentleman by the nick of Phone Home said hot flow anomalies occur quite often. He thinks a few per week there. So if anybody has any input in the Paltalk chat room about these HFAs, go ahead and type it in there, and I'll just kind of interject here as Relic and Mike's going back and forth there.
Yeah, that's what I've been finding out. They happen a few times a week. Now, whether they happen on Earth, I don't know, because we have our magnetosphere around us that kind of it protects us. And you're right, Venus. Relic has no protection, but still, yet it would be like there's so much energy released at that time on the surface of Venus, real close to the surface of Venus. But I'm asking the question: what would be the ramifications of it doing that to Earth? What I've been able to find out, that really they happen often, but really NASA or none of the scientists that study these things have really come to a conclusion and give us an answer of really what is going on. They don't know.
Yeah, see,
that's what makes this thing so special.
What we were thinking about these HFAs, they're kind of at random all over the planet. I mean, do they really know where they're going to happen at any given time? And would these HFAs cause this so-called reversal that we saw? Would they cause the wind out there to go completely in a 180-degree direction at that magnitude? I can't picture that in my mind, this HFA thing causing that to happen.
Well, you know what me and Relic was talking about the other night when we was discussing this? The sun, at the time this happened, the sun was getting, it looked like, okay, I don't know, a lot of people don't study it and watch it, but we are coming in what they call a solar maximum. We ain't even got close to that date yet. The sun was really getting wound up at that time, and it was throwing off a lot of CMEs, some of them Earth-directed, a lot of them not. It was having coronal mass holes in its surface all around it. But at the time, it seemed like when this happened, this HFA, excuse me, when this hot flow anomaly happened, it just seemed like the sun has kind of just cooled its jets. Let's put it that way. It just calmed down. Now, what would be the why? That's what gets to me, is why.
Yeah,
that's the big question.
We're going to study these HFAs more, but to me, they're kind of at random. A lot of turbulence. In fact, Phone Home just typed in there, I think HFAs are like turbulence. So they'd be pretty unpredictable, and that's kind of my train of thought too. They're Phone Home, that they're unpredictable, and we really don't know where they're going to happen or how long they're going to last. So we're going to have to try to fit that into the equation, but we're really going for what could possibly happen out in space to cause this massive wind to hit us from the backside there. So I think we should pick it up from there and carry on out to the next step going out here.
I want to say one thing. Keith Hunter's wanting to come in. I'm just trying to get him on my contact list so I can pull him into the conversation. He wants to join the roundtable.
Okay, sounds good to me.
And while I'm waiting to get his, okay, I just got his name. Let me add him as a contact. And I wanted to say one thing about the HFAs. I'll try to do this while adding.
Let me see if I can bring him into the conference here. I might be able to do this.
Do you have his name?
I got him. Let me give him a buzz here. Keith, we're calling you. Are we still here? Okay. Okay.
Hello?
Oh, there you are. Can you hear us okay, Keith?
Yeah, is that?
Good.
Welcome to the table, Keith.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, thanks for coming in, man. Go ahead. Yeah, you're probably getting a delay there, Keith. Just go ahead. You're live on the air.
Yeah, I'm just going to... I think I'll plug in my headphones, actually. I'm getting some kind of, like, feedback.
Yeah, headphones would be good with Skype, believe me. Always try to use headphones with Skype. I think Kevin can concur with that.
Or what I do is just mute my mic whenever I'm not talking.
Yeah, we'll give Keith a second here to get some headphones on there, but
I'll fill in some time while he's getting his headphones ready.
I've just put it on. Yeah, I've just put it on.
Okay.
I think I've muted the room as well. That might have been it.
Yeah, just mute the room. You can hear us talking in here. Just carry on with the conference in here. Your audio sounds good. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I just thought I'd join it. I thought it would next 15 minutes. The time delay, 5 hours Eastern. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I say I've just literally coming, so I didn't think it had started yet. So I've kind of like caught in on the tail end of what you've been saying. But with regard to, I said the magnetosphere, and I know that the video I assume you've been discussing is the one by Suspicious Observer, with regards to the flip. And what we were discussing, I think yesterday, it seemed to occur at least on one of the images over at least a 6-minute period, something like 16 hours 28 minutes to I think 16:36 on March the 12th. In the way it seemed to switch. I mean, there's a few different things to that. I think what I'd be interested in knowing is more about the story regarding, I understand it was taken down from the websites and how frequently this kind of thing happens. I think that'd definitely be something to consider, in terms of realizing the significance of the event. I think there's a big factor to look at, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, go ahead, Relic or Mike. Do I still have Relic here?
Yeah, yeah. I was just going to say that Causic's wanting to join the roundtable too. I just wanted to put that out there.
Okay, I don't have. Let me see if I can get a request from Causic. What his nick is there, so I can add him to my list there, so I can bring him in. Just go ahead and carry on with the conversation there. I'll work on it there.
I missed that last part of what you were saying, Keith. Do you mind just repeating that one more time and just real quickly in a nutshell?
Yeah. Is the mic working okay? Is the sound okay?
Yeah. Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah. I was just wondering about the issue of the video by Suspicious Observer and about
right.
the what was said about the actual video or the data regarding the flip being taken down. And I was wondering whether or not there's any more information regarding that in terms of how frequently that occurs and how frequently this kind of flip has occurred, or is this the first time we've noticed it? So I think, in terms of people looking at or trying to even come up with what the significance of the event is, knowing that would be a big help. You know what I mean? And even isolating what...
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You bring up a good question, and I was going to touch on that just a little bit ago. Now, according to Dr. Keith Strong and the folks at NASA, they say that this is a common occurrence. Well, if it's such a common occurrence, why have we never seen it before? Another point is we've never seen the sites go down for as long as they went down. And we've never seen that much data be unavailable to us. I'm going to put that politely.
That's what I was going to say right there, Relic. That's one thing I was going to hit on. If they say it's such a common occurrence, they took that information down. That data they took down and called it garbage. That's that's straight from them. What I've been able to find, NASA called it garbage. That data was considered garbage by them, so they took it down. If it's such a common occurrence, why don't they take a lot more garbage down if they're putting it out? That's just
right.
The way I look at it. If they're calling it garbage and it happens so often, now why do they not take the data down all the time if it happens all the time? I find that I don't know, something wrong with that.
So if the data was bad, I might expect to be missing. They do that in like 5, 10, 15-minute increments. They release frames of data, right? So I would expect, if it's bad data, you pull down, there might be an hour or two missing. Big deal. If we had seen these things before, I'd say big deal. Another thing is they say that they're blaming this event and the so-called bad data on these HFAs. And now they say that these HFAs are a very common occurrence here on Earth too. Now, if that is the case, again, why haven't we seen one of these common HFAs affect the magnetosphere?
Choose your side. Join the battle. Star Wars, the Old Republic. Rated T.
The way we saw the magnetosphere affected on the 12th. Why?
It's a good question.
Aren't those valid questions? I mean, doesn't that make you say,
yeah,
what?
It does me. That's
kidding
what
me?
It does me. It affects me in a big way. I mean, that little word "why" means a lot.
And Keith, have you heard much about HFAs in the past? Has anybody studied that out here that's posted it in any of our rooms? That's the first I've never heard
about it. Until after this event, then they wanted to release a publication and make it a point that, oh, look, it just happened on Venus, and
yeah, why hasn't anybody been talking about these all along, that if they fit into the equation of what's going on? This is the first time I've heard about it. I don't know how many. I've been out here for a long time listening to all the people talk about space and all this stuff, and I've never heard about an HFA before. If it's so significant, why haven't we heard about it before? I'm not saying they don't exist. I believe they exist. But if they're so significant, why haven't we heard about them more often?
Yeah, and to the listeners out there, and even to the pros, I mean, do you understand, how the evidence is starting to stack against what you have told us? And to the people in the other camp that are still saying, these guys are crazy, they're off the rocker, what are they smoking? No. There's so many things that just don't add up, and we haven't even gotten to the juicy stuff yet. Now, if this would have been a 1 or 2 hour event, and even if we saw a reversal, and they said it was bad data, and it was and it only lasted an hour or two, we wouldn't be here talking about it right now, or I wouldn't. But we saw a reversal for 28 hours. And that, Tim, I know you've dealt with a lot of data and plots before. What do you see on graphed data when it's bad and then it gets plotted out on a graph? What do you usually see when you have bad data that is plotted out on a graph?
Well, two obvious things you might see. You might lose your data completely, and you might just flatline on your data. You lose your data stream coming in. Or the second obvious thing that you see is you start picking up random numbers that make no sense at all, and your graphs are going every which way. They just absolutely don't make any sense. So that's bad random data. Them are the two obvious ones. There could be other minute ones that maybe you're getting a glitch here and there. You might see a spike on your plot as it's plotting out this data. You might see this big spike all of a sudden, where it could just be some kind of a electrical spike or something like that. You might start seeing stuff like that. You'll start seeing these weird things start happening. And once you start seeing something that looks abnormal, you can pretty much rest assured that you're starting to get bad data coming in. you got bad cables, or you got a bad satellite up there sending data, or you're getting some kind of interference, you're going to start seeing all kinds of random stuff happening that don't make sense.
Okay, I totally concur with that. Go ahead, Keith.
I was just going to say, usually when data is pulled down, the way at least I read it psychologically is that it means that the people gathering that data and presenting it, they know what happened, in the sense that they know what caused it, or at least they think they do. And it could be either a natural event, which they don't want to draw attention to, and this is the thing about earthquakes. You might have, the recent March the 20th earthquake. And I wonder whether or not you've seen some of the video presentations, especially Dutch Sins drawing attention to the fact that there was an earthquake drill planned and even reported in various news articles a few weeks ago, early March, on March the 20th for a 7.9 magnitude earthquake in Mexico. And again, the fact that went out there suggests they knew something was happening. I think if you've got data being pulled or modified, it's an indication that the people behind it are aware of what is going on. Now, it might be a natural event, or it might be something somebody has artificially triggered in an energetic way through some sort of technology, possibly, dare I say, as an attack or some sort of aggressive move. Although in this case, if it's a global flip of the Earth's field, I don't know how you'd really reconcile that. But I think that the idea that somebody must have really known or suspected strongly exactly what caused this, pulling the data is to hide what the cause was, and they did not want to go into that.
Hey,
they
guys,
may well be very clued up on that.
We got a call coming in. I'm going to answer it from 813. We'll see if they can give us any input. Let me pick up this call real quick and see. 813. Go ahead, 813.
Hey, it's Joanna. How y'all doing?
Good, Joanna. How you doing? Good to hear from you.
Oh, wait a minute. I need the computer.
If you got headphones or something, we recommend headphones on Skype. Absolutely, you'll get that echo. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm such a pro at this. Anyways, has anybody tried to contact Mr. Comet?
Mr. Comet Watch, or what? His name's Mr.
Yeah, Suspicious Observer, and Mr. Too Tough to try to connect the dots to all this.
I don't know if they're listening today. I hope they're listening out there. If they'd like to chime in, they can contact the studio here at our studio numbers if they'd like to chime in, or they can join us in the chat room here. I'm not sure if they're in here or not. They can let me know, and we'd be more than welcome to get them on here. But that's we've looked at their information too. We're counting on them for good data and good info. So that's a great idea, Joanna. Thank you.
Well, I'll let y'all go. I just wanted to throw that out there. Sorry.
Okay. Well, no, that's fine. What do you think so far? Do you think all of this is pretty bizarre too? How do you feel about this?
Well, you know what? Mr. Comet Watch posted the video today, and I don't know if anybody else gets this way, but I start vibrating. And I'm like, oh my gosh, something's going on.
So what you're saying is you're kind of sensing something. I mean, we don't discount anything. You're kind of sensing something inside of you, kind of like a gut feeling. You're telling us that you feel something's amiss with something out there going on. Is that what you're saying?
No, I vibrate. I literally am like, no, I've never taken drugs or done any of that stuff, so I can't explain it. But so it's like your body is. It's like when you stick your finger in a light socket. Now I've done that, and you're like, woo!
Oh, okay, so it's almost like an electrical energy or like a massive adrenaline rush or something like that.
Yes, exactly. That's why I know something's going on. So.
Well, that's good information, and that's the kind of information we want to know, because all kinds of strange stuff can go on. So you can't really discount some of them feelings that people get. So I appreciate the call, Joanna.
Oh, well, thanks for inviting me. And if people are like really moody, that's another thing that if you're conscious of this.
Absolutely. That's
absolutely. Thanks. Have a great day.
Well, you have a blessed day too. Thanks, Joanna. Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye now. Okay, guys. Let's see. Okay, sorry about that. I just put you.
And it was just actually.
I just put you on hold there a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was an article which was just referencing what was happening with regards to the magnetic field of the Earth when we had a coronal mass ejection. And some of the scientists were trying to judge when they saw coronal mass ejection coming towards us, and they were talking about the different polarities. And they were saying if the magnetic field is one way, that is, quote, shields up, and if it's the other way, it's, quote, shields down. And they were saying that they were expecting a coronal mass ejection to have a significant impact on the Earth, and it was like nothing happened. It went straight through us, nothing happened. And they were saying that they are still trying to figure out exactly what it means in terms of the magnetic field and how that, quote, protects us from CMEs and so forth. And I think this idea of things flipping around, whether they're suddenly or even gradually or over a few hours and then reversing back, I think that the scientists themselves are still trying to figure out how that either makes us, if you will, vulnerable or not. Even the top guys in the field are still wondering about how the interaction occurs and whether some events, when they, quote, hit us, just seem to pass us by as if they weren't doing anything, and other events seem to really hit us hard in an energetic way in terms of causing such as electrical disturbances on the Earth. I think they're still trying to figure it out even then, and this is again one of the reasons why it's difficult to really get a handle on the strength of these events. And I would imagine that the idea or the fact that somebody pulled the data on seems to suggest somebody thought this was in some way significant. Hard to tell.
Well, we'll get into it later, and we've got a few ideas on what might have happened based on some tips we have gotten from anonymous sources, from Fermi LAT. Anybody who don't know, those are the guys that operate the Fermi satellite, and they observe and detect and record gamma ray bursts, and we'll get into that later.
Keith was making some good points there about the magnetic field and stuff. For the layman out there, our Earth obviously has a north and a south pole. We're just one big giant magnet, to simplify things. We're just a big magnet, and we're a variable magnet. We can switch polarities. We can move it around. Whatever. Our Earth does whatever it takes to protect us with its magnetic shield around us from bad things coming in and eating us. So, what he was talking about with the solar wind and that magnetic interaction between the sun and the Earth, you have. We have all learned in school that opposite polarities attract each other, and similar polarities repel each other. Like positive and positive will repel, and a positive and a negative will attract. Where a north will attract to a south pole, and two north poles will repel each other. That's the way magnetism works, basically. So our Earth is constantly shifting around and figuring all this stuff out to keep us safe out there from all the boogeymen out there in space. So that's pretty much what our magnetosphere does, and our magnetic energy on this Earth. So good, Relic, pick it up from there, and we're getting into some more juicy stuff here with this magnetic stuff going on here. So we can take it to the next step if you want to.
So we're looking at all this, and when you realize that, like Keith said, shields up, shields down. If we were experiencing something, and it may be something we can explain, it may be something we can't comprehend, but we do know that from one side, we were getting it from the sun. The other side is still up for debate, what was in opposition. But that begs the question, how were there no consequences? Now, we've even seen warnings during, like, when we're expecting an X flare, for example. You may hear on the news, NASA reports there's an X-flare coming, they'll give you a real quick 15, 20-second news plug on a mainstream media outlet. And you'll read on the internet and that there could be ground currents. Those things do happen. They detect electricity actually being inducted from these things and flowing through the ground. And this can be measured, and it has been measured in the past, even with smaller storms.
Right, it's just basically electrical currents going through the ground. There's electrical currents going through our ground all the time anyway, but what they're talking about is probably on a more massive scale, where the ground currents would exceed the nominal limits of what's going through the ground right now, because our ground has currents going through it all the time. Go ahead.
Right, Tim, exactly. You know, it's above what is normal or ambient. And yes, it would be a large amount of current. I mean, if you could harness that power, you know, it would probably be enough to power a city for quite some time. But the other effects, power outages, you know, just all the different consequences. If our shields were weakened or even down, and we were getting hit by the sun on one side and this mystery force from the backside, that begs the question, why were there no consequences? And even it begs the question to me, how on earth are we still here to talk about it?
Yeah, we got hit by that massive stream of something out there on the backside when that flip happened. So why didn't all of our detection devices on this planet pick that up when we start getting big ground currents and stuff like that, and maybe having some power grids go down or some kind of weird things happen with our radio transmission and stuff like that. But I did find out, we heard that we lost a few satellites up there. I think some of the satellites went into a safekeeping mode. I think they self-protect themselves, so they'll shut themselves down automatically and go into a safe mode. I heard that we've lost maybe one or two. I think a Korean satellite or something went down. I'm still checking on that. There was disruption in the some of the Hughes satellites that transmit your satellite TV signals and stuff like that. They recorded a bunch of strange stuff going on with that. They had some signal loss and stuff. So I'm still, like I said, I'm still researching that to find out what happened. Go ahead, Riley.
2 points I want to touch on. Number one, somebody named Corvus brought up a good point, and this is for all you researchers out there, and this is probably something that we all need to do. He asked, are there any other records of this mystery force ever happening before? So, yes, I think we need to go back. And if this is such a common occurrence as they tell us, then we need to go back and try to find another one of these events, pull that data down, and start doing some comparisons. And the second thing I wanted to bring up was I think I might have my own explanation for why the solar wind may have jumped as high as it did in a moderate storm, if you want to hear it.
You know what I was thinking about doing is maybe playing the video relic of the what we was looking at on the graphs with the magnetopause and magnetosphere, what we was getting, and then we finally found the missing data. I could play that video. We can all kind of stretch our legs here while the video is playing. Do you have the video up on your computer, Relic, so you can kind of walk us through what's going on here? Because I don't have the audio on there. It's just a video, I believe.
There was the only audio is. I mean, there was some music behind it. What I was going to suggest is for the folks who are not on Ustream and cannot see this feed, can somebody throw out a link in the chat room to that video? It is, I think it's one of the last videos on my YouTube channel.
Yeah,
Delta or somebody else maybe can throw that link out so that other people who aren't on Ustream can view it with us.
Yeah, if somebody has Relic's video of that plot and that what was going on, there you go. Somebody, is that the one there, Planet X Research? Okay, we got the Ustream there.
No, that's not it.
That might be.
It's on my YouTube channel.
Oh, okay. I think that's the room. I think Corvus is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Thank you, Delta.
Okay, good. See,
Thank you.
Delta always comes through, man. Kudos for Delta.
Yes.
Delta rocks.
Yep.
Okay, so what I'm going to play the video, and while the video is playing, Relic can probably explain what we're seeing here. I don't know if there's the music playing or whatever, but I think you could probably be heard over the top of the video. So I'll go ahead and play that if you want to.
You can turn the audio down. It's mainly just background music, and I'll try to explain what's going on to the best of my ability.
Okay, let me start this here and see what happens. The video superseded the audio. I know we got the audio back now, so Relic's going to explain what you've seen on Ustream, if you was watching Ustream. So go ahead, Relic.
Yeah,
you can
explain. I was trying to explain it. We didn't realize that my audio was muted because the video was playing. But at the beginning, did you all notice that shield was on the right side where it should be? And you were seeing the solar wind. That was when the solar storm was happening, and so the solar flare and the solar storm and the solar wind was blowing from the right side of the screen to the left. And then you see this opposing force start to come up from behind that was, for all y'all who were watching, it was colored blue, okay? And you've seen all those little arrows were showing you the direction, the polarity of the magnetic field lines outside of our magnetosphere. So what you seen happen was something come up from behind, which we're still debating what that was, and it met the solar wind at our magnetopause. They wrestled there for a few minutes, and that's when the field was seen flipping back and forth. Like I said, it was reported to have flipped 4 times in 16 minutes. But then, for 28 hours, it won. It won that arm wrestling contest with the sun. And it pushed it back.
Right.
And you had interplanetary magnetic field lines and particle flow towards the sun, pushing that solar wind back.
Yeah, so
after about 1,800 hours.
Yeah, so what we saw was...
Anybody who needs to recap that, if Delta wants to throw the link back up in the room, you can go watch that video again.
Okay, so can you still hear me, Relic?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're a little bit muffled. It might be bandwidth.
Yeah, it's probably bandwidth. Yeah, what we saw the magnetopause flip around. We saw the magnetic field lines of the Earth going all haywire and doing all kinds of strange stuff. And then all of a sudden, we seen flux lines straighten out, completely straight, side by side on that video. They was completely straight, coming from the dark side of the Earth, coming from outer space. They were straight lines, completely straight lines coming toward the Earth. Massive amounts of power was flowing at that point. It totally took over the magnetopause and the magnetic, what's the other one? The magnetosphere and the magnetopause. I'm trying to get these words right. You have to pardon me. I'm not a scientist. Okay, so all
now,
of us...
two things to point out about that. You know, me and Delta were trying to hurry up and pull down these images, and it was kind of funny because I'm sitting there doing it and Delta's doing it, and Delta already had his video up on YouTube. I'm like, wow, how'd you do it that fast? And he said, well, there was hours and hours where you had the same picture. And I thought so too, until I got all of the frames from an anonymous source. I still don't know who this person was. but obviously they were keeping an eye on the research that's going on in the community. When I put those frames back together, I realized they weren't standing still. It wasn't a steel frame for, maybe 8, 9, 10 hours. It's just that there was very, very little change, but each frame was different. But I was also told that the flow that came from behind was very, with a capital VERY, very dense in electrons.
They told you it was electrons?
What you have coming from the sun are mainly protons. So you have a massive electric charge, electron flow coming from the back that is negatively charged. When it meets the solar wind and they start arm wrestling, that is when you start seeing it flip, and that's also when you see the solar wind jump over 800 kilometers a second. Well, Tim, you and many of us out here know, what do opposites do?
What do opposites do? They attract each
other.
Yep. Opposite polarities attract each other.
Okay, protons from the sun are polarized how?
Protons are positive.
Yep. Electrons are charged how?
Electrons are negative. Which way does current flow?
From negative to positive.
Exactly. From negative to positive.
That is why I think we saw such a jump. I don't think the solar wind was 830 kilometers per second.
Nor do I.
I think when that stream of electrons got close enough, it pulled the protons in at the speed of light. Electrons flow through a conductor at the speed of light, as you learn in electronics. That's one of the first things you learn. Another thing that I observed, and I don't know if this is getting too technical, but anybody in electronics or anybody who has been through basic electronics knows about the left thumb rule of electromagnetism. That left thumb rule was obeyed when the current was flowing one way and when the current flowed the other way.
What happened?
If you look inside the magnetopause, you'll not only see satellites that are rotating, you'll see little icons. You'll also see magnetic arrows. There's only a few of them, but you'll see magnetic lines, and it's showing the direction, the polarity. Well, they're going to go clockwise as long as the current flow is in one direction. When the current goes to the other direction, your magnetic flux lines are going to go the opposite.
Choose your side. Join the battle. Star Wars, the Old Republic. Rated T.
Direction, which is obeying the left thumb rule. So that is another reason why I find the data to be pristine. It is not junk data, because looking at that tells me that the basic laws of electromagnetism were obeyed.
And the power coming, excuse me one second, Keith, the power coming from out there in space totally overwhelmed the power totally overwhelmed our Earth's magnetosphere and the magnetopause. It totally overwhelmed it and calmed it right down to a null and void entity. It literally made it a neutral force with no interaction. It was just like a rock in the middle of a stream sitting there doing nothing except behaving itself like a good little boy. The power coming from space, that electron flow coming from space, was going directly toward the sun. It was totally linked up with the sun. Massive amounts of current flow were happening at that point in time. When them lines straightened out, it was an enormous, we couldn't even see the outer boundaries of that flow of current happening at that point. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I was just basically going to ask you, I've just been looking at the video and the flow lines, and I don't know whether the data shows you this, and this might be something, quite a few people out there may be wondering about. The general pattern, initially, with the arrows going towards the Earth and the shield, unquote, to the right side, we're seeing the major influence on the sun, so we know where the sun is. I'm just wondering, because the video, I know it's in 2 dimensions and it seems to just switch. Is there any data indicating that, because obviously I'm wondering whether or not, if we're talking about possibly an object in space or some celestial object, even if it's significantly far away, if the current was drawn towards that, was this like a basic 180-degree flip, if you like, directly away from the sun, or was this a flip which was orientated towards another body, and it wasn't a 180-degree flip? So we might be wondering whether or not that could give us an indication of the position of a body or a direction to look at as to where the field was reorientated. I don't know whether that makes much sense.
Yeah, I think what happened, I think the flip phenomenon that happened when it started flipping back and forth, I think that power out there was just so overwhelming that it actually put the Earth into a neutral position. Like I said, it told the Earth to behave itself at that point, because you have the sun, which is an enormous power. You got that positive proton on the sun side. You got that massive electron flow on the other side, which would neutralize anything in between it. When that current flow, that massive current flow started, it literally neutralized our Earth's magnetic field. Sure, we still had a magnetic field, but it was actually made null and void at that point. It was still protecting us, but it really didn't have nothing to protect us from because of that overwhelming force coming from the cosmos out there. Because that force, that field stream was just so massive going toward the sun, that current flow, that our Earth would, all it really had to do was just kind of sit there and behave itself for a while until this massive current stream stopped. And then the Earth would get back to its happy little self. Go ahead.
Well, it is essentially a rush towards equilibrium that we see. I think ultimately that explains everything, you could say, but as long as you're not pushed beyond a certain critical threshold, you will return to a normal state. It's like the energetic equivalent, if you will, of what people say has been pushed beyond the elastic limit. Well, that's a bit of a crude metallurgical example, but I see where you're coming from, yeah.
Right. The force between the sun and the Earth, the north and the south, equalized between that distance between the Earth and the sun, and it equalized on the opposite side, the positive side of our planet, our positive pole, equalized with that force coming from the cosmos out there. So it in essence nullified our Earth's magnetic field. So it just kind of made it behave itself right there. It said, okay, Earth, we got control here. Just calm down and let us do our thing.
I just wanted to say real quick, Causic's been wanting to come in for a while. I don't know if you have him on your Skype, but his Skype name is just Causic.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I hear you.
Oh, is he in here right now?
Yeah, Timmy, can you hear me?
I got Mike. Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
hear
added
everybody.
I added Causic to the call a while ago, and he's been trying to get into the call here, and we're not sure. We've got our text window open up here in the Skype call. I don't know if you guys do or not been watching it, but
No.
if you don't, you should open it up so you can see it.
Yeah, I'll open mine up. I didn't have mine open. I apologize for that. Causic, if you're here, go ahead. Thanks for coming on in.
Well, Tim, I don't know if you can hear me right now, but I usually don't. You have to add me to your contact list. Yeah, because you guys have been saying a lot of good stuff. Man, for the last 15, 20 minutes, I've been trying to chime in because you know how I am. I'm a mic hog.
We got all the time in the world, man. Take your time. Tell us what's on your mind.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you something. We'd have to go way back, so we'll just start from here. But I'll tell you something. There's a couple of different camps on what you guys are saying here, and I wish we could have gotten in here and talked to you, because I think it would have been profitable. The end result is that there's a couple of other things that you might not have looked at right here. And when you were looking at certain definitions about these diagrams, understanding the word diagram, these aren't graphs, these are diagrams. Right, these are not real time. They say they're real time diagrams. That's almost an oxymoron by itself, right? I mean, these satellites that they're looking at this data, this information, especially, we have very little monitoring data that comes from the backside of the Earth as it pertains to the magnetopause. And that's true. Causic, your audio is a bit off from normal. What does it sound like? I'll tell you something. I came into this Skype call, and it's been really buggy. I'm using a cheat.
Yeah, it's just bandwidth. That's all. You're just cracking a little bit, but we can understand you pretty good there. So just keep going. It's just bandwidth. No problem.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually go out of the call. I'm going to reboot this computer, and I'm going to come back in, because I think it's pretty important that you guys can hear me pretty good. So when you see me come back on Skype, just give me a call back, okay?
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah, we certainly want to hear your point of view. So yes.
Absolutely, Causic. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. Just try that.
Be right back.
No problem. Go ahead. Pick it up from there, Relic, or Keith. Anyone want to pick it up from here? Where we're at here right now, our Earth is neutralized. It's just that rock sitting out in the middle of the stream out there, just behaving itself right now. And at the point we're at right now, we got this massive current flow coming from outer space out in the cosmos. So we'll pick it up from there.
Well, I will say one thing about what Causic mentioned, and I'm not trying to be disagreeable, but he's right in one aspect that, yes, there's not a lot of equipment out there measuring these stuff. But there are Ghost 13 and Ghost 11, and there's a few others that provide this real-time magnetosphere and magnetopause data. They orbit the Earth on the day side and the night side. They're constantly going around.
Explain what Ghost is. They're two satellites.
Right. You got Ghost 11 and Ghost 13. Now, the South Koreans had another one trailing Ghost 13 and 11, but in the last major solar flare, it was taken out. Now, I'm sure there are more up there. So, I mean, at any given time, you're getting readings from, and he's also right when he says it's not real time. I mean, that data is recorded. It is sent down, it is processed, it is put into a software program that renders it into a graphical format. So, yeah, I mean, you're not actually, there is a delay. Okay, so we'll go ahead and, that is true. But it's as real time as we're going to get unless we can see magnetic fields with our own eyes, which we cannot. And unless we're in a spaceship, 100,000 miles away looking back at our planet with some super night vision that can also show us magnetic field lines, correct?
Correct. Keep going.
Okay. But to say that the backside is not monitored, the reason I don't agree with that is because those satellites, and there are several, while there's not a large amount, you have some ahead of each other and some trailing each other, but they constantly go around the Earth day and night side making these observations. So what I'm saying is, yes, both sides, day and night side of the Earth, are being recorded. I just wanted to put that out there. And I also wanted to point out that, when you look back at that simulation, the one with all the arrows is the one, a lot of people have already seen the other views and the other simulations, but the one with the arrows was just put together 2 nights ago, and I haven't seen it anywhere else. And I haven't seen it on YouTube or in any science forums or space or solar flare forums. So that is the one to me that was also the most revealing. And I think that's, Tim, is that the one that kind of knocked you back as well?
Yeah, that's kind of the topic we wanted to talk about, where we're going to really stretch it and take it out of the box here a little bit. This is where we talk about time. Yeah. This is where we talk about time and space. I think a lot of people in the room remembered my little analogy with a yardstick in relation to how long it takes to get across that yardstick. I'll say it once again, just for those of you that didn't hear me talk about this. If we place a yardstick on the floor, we know it's 36 inches long. Here in America, it's 36 inches. It's 3 foot. If I walk across that yardstick, it takes a certain amount of time to get from 0 inches to 36 inches. If I grow to be 500 feet tall, how long does it take for me to get one step across that yardstick? So there's time involved here. It's going to take me a lot sooner to get across there than it would with me getting across there at my nominal height I'm at of 6 foot now. Now, if I could shrink myself down to the size of an atom, how long would it take me to get from 0 inches to 36 inches if I was an atom? It would take me a lifetime. It would take me a long time. So we've been talking in the room about just kind of throwing time out the window here, completely forgetting about time, just kind of making time irrelevant. So this comes into play with what Relic and I think we saw, possibly saw, maybe saw, or just think we saw. So go ahead and pick it up from there, Relic, and tell them what happened at that time when you was watching it and you brought it to my attention.
Are you talking about any coinciding events that happened?
Yeah, everything relating to that where we think time stood still.
Well, before we get into that, maybe we should look at some possible, if it was an opposing force, maybe we should look at what it could have been.
Can I say something real fast with that, Timmy?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Okay, I've been doing some research. We've been doing some research on this now. I figured I've learned this much, and this is NASA and all of them speaking. One day on Venus, okay, one Venus day is 243 days, Earth days. Now, I just want to inject that in there when you talk about your time thing. That.
Right, but we're basing everything off time as we know it here on planet Earth. We're basing it off of our concept of time. Like that, on our wristwatch and stuff. We have a baseline here that we call time. Time is our baseline that we compare everything else to out in space and all of that. So what I'm saying is time.
Okay, this is where
I might just
go ahead, Keith.
Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I was just going to throw something in here because somebody just mentioned about what possible event could cause it, and somebody just mentioned Venus. I've got Starry Night open, and I've been looking at the March the 12th, 1600 hours, 28 minutes, and there's a conjunction of the Earth, Jupiter, and Venus. It does not involve the Sun. It's a close type match. I'd have to evaluate it further, but again, I'm just biased maybe from my own perspective here, but for me, I always look at the planets, the Sun, the Moon as major factors, and even some of the other, like we had the event on March the 7th when we had the X flare 5 point that's something or other 5.7 maybe. I mean that again, there's this beautiful, very accurate twin conjunction centered on the Sun, where you've got the Sun, Moon, and Venus line up very accurately, and then almost 60 degrees offset, you've got the Sun, the Earth, and Mars very much lined up. And again, people are talking about the CME going in the direction of the Earth, and they're being worried. And it strikes me that this would be natural for the CME to be drawn in the direction of the planets involved in the conjunction, which essentially triggered the event, and they're not natural in the way they play out. And this is why when I think about this reversal, and this is why I was just mentioning earlier about if it's possible, and I know it's looking like a two-dimensional image, if it's possible to work out some sort of directionality that's maybe a bit more accurate in terms of where the reversal could have been flipped to or drawn towards, whether or not it was exactly 180 degrees from the sun, or whether or not there's some other directionality to it, because that might indicate an external celestial source. And obviously, let's say from my bias, I'd be looking at the conjunction angle, that sort of thing.
Okay, Keith, I have something for you now. You say there was two conjunctions with an angle of approximately 60 degrees. Okay?
That's on the March the 7th solar flare.
Okay, on March the 7th, we had them two conjunctions happen. So if you drew a line between them planets, down both conjunctions, and then drew a line across, you would get the shape of a what? A triangle, correct?
Well, the 60-degree one, it does, as I say, it splits up obviously the circle into 6 parts, 360 degrees. And if you're talking about a basic isosceles triangle, then you'd be, what is it?
Right.
I think now.
Right. We're pretty
60 degrees in each.
Yeah, we're pretty close to an isosceles triangle, right?
So equilateral is what I meant. 60 degrees in each one, because it all equals 180. Yeah.
180 degrees. That's right. We'll get them equal angles in there. So now, if I was a Mayan or I was some ancient civilization looking up at these conjunctions, and I see these stars in the shape of a triangle, I'd be going, we have a triangle, because that was significant to the Mayans. They studied the stars constantly. They studied the heavens. They studied all these patterns up there. That's why they drew all these pictorials and stuff on rocks and all that stuff. So now, if that conjunction happened back then, they're looking at a triangle. And they're looking at that, and somehow, possibly, we don't know if it's possible for them to do it back then, but possibly they was looking at the sun. And if that shape of a triangle just happened to be on the sun, in the same shape as it was that what we saw as a triangle, now we have two triangles. And we were looking out in space on Stellarium and other programs, and we was looking at something called, it's by the Southern Cross. I forget what that triangle was. I brought that up to Relic.
Cross of, is it Mendes or something?
Yeah,
or Hendes? Or...
Yeah, there's a Southern Cross, and then right to the left of that was three bright stars. I think it made up some kind of constellation out there that was an exact same shape as a triangle. And we all know that pyramids are triangles, and there's pyramids all over this planet. So we're putting all this stuff together. I know it's stretching the box a little bit. It's going out on a limb, but the shape of a triangle has massive significance amongst the stars and of space. So that's why I'm bringing all these triangles into the equation. So go ahead and carry on, Keith, if you want to, and then we'll get Relic back here, up here.
Well, 1 second. Causic's, he's in the room, and he's on my contact list. I tried to drag him in, but he's...
Tim has to invite you because Tim can't hear me. Tim cannot hear me.
I got you, Causic. I hear you perfectly now.
Go hallelujah. Macha Mamadona Kachamajeta.
Whatever you said. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Hey, consider now that this is our first show on our own equipment, so this is kind of like our pilot run. So there are still things to work out.
I'm trying to help you guys. Actually, the reason I came here is because of Relic. I respect him, and I think that you guys are nailing this and doing the research. I'm listening to what you're saying, and I know that you guys are doing the research. There are some holes in there, and I'm not saying that I know anything, but I think that I could add to it. I was like, man, I wish I could get in there.
Yeah, we'd love you to add to it.
After, what, an hour and 40 minutes?
Hey, we got lots of time. Just add to it. Go ahead.
We got all the time we need, Causic, so the floor is yours.
Well, I'll tell you, let's go back and take a look at some of these things. I mean, I hate to start from the very beginning, but first of all, listen, when you're looking at a diagram is a computer model. Now, it's not real. It says it's real time, but it's not real time. What it is, real time meaning that after they based on the policies of how they developed the diagram, then they put that information up. Now, it does, because the way that they do this happens pretty quick, but there's a lag time. And even when you're looking at SODO, when you're looking at LASCO, like SODO, let's just use SODO as an example. And Keith knows this. They will take SODO images, and they use a type of oversampling. You guys know what oversampling is?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Explain just briefly what oversampling is for the listeners.
Well, Tim, you could explain it, and I guess the best way, people, I'm sure they've heard of oversampling as far as like CD Walkmans, CD players. Yeah,
okay. You can use digital oversampling.
Right.
What they do is they take a little bit of information in front of the data and a little bit behind the data, right? And then they fill in
the data stream.
Huh?
In case you lose the data stream, that way you've got a buffer of information ahead and a buffer of information behind.
Right. So let's take it to the next level. When you're looking at SODO, or if you're looking at SOHO or SODO, what happens? Stereo ahead and stereo behind. If you're looking at the cores, satellite systems, what happens is there's a massive solar glare. So what they do is they filter out the solar glare by editing the video. And what they do is they go back and literally take out all the solar glare that happens, so that we can see what's going on.
Right. It's like getting into high resolution where they can take out the stuff that they don't need because they oversample like that. That's very correct.
That's right. And so what happens is, but that technology creates a lot of anomalies, and that's why sometimes you'll hear people talk about, well, we saw this white patch that looked like a ship over Venus as it was moving through SOHO. Yada yada, right? You guys ever seen those?
Yeah, and we're quick to debunk that. We do realize that, Causic, and we see a lot of ridiculous videos about a giant ship passed in front of stereo because the Earth went between the sun and the satellite, and you get filaments on lenses and dust, and I know exactly where you're coming from, and then you get a lot of crazy theories out there, right. and we are quick in. If you know us, we're quick to take those videos and say, that's not right, and here's why.
Right, a lot of us are. Causic does that. We all do it. All of us that's been looking at this stuff, that's questioning this stuff, we all do that. And he's right about oversampling like that, because they're trying to get rid of all them anomalies out there to the best of their ability, because they want to see the true picture out there. Go ahead, Causic.
So that's also including like this conspiracy idea that they're cutting and pasting, which they are. They're cutting and pasting, images when you're looking at these satellites. A lot of times that you'll see this. Obviously, it looks like a college kid, cut and pasted those videos. You'll see these lines, very very clear lines, between in the video where you're wondering, well, where's that data at? Well, they removed that data because that data would have been otherwise just total pixelation, which would have totally ruined the video. So, and you're also talking about satellites that were put up a long time ago. I mean, in your cell phone, you've got a better camera in your cell phone than they have on Core A and Core 1 and 2. You guys have more. We have more power. Since they put these satellites up there, and plus they've been beat the heck and back by radiation and solar winds and a whole lot of problems. So when we're looking at this data, understand, now you said a few minutes ago that, this has to be caused by, or might be caused by, some outside force, which, like this neutron event, right? The neutron event caused a major, inflow that eventually made it to us.
Well, we actually haven't gotten, we've just been talking about the event itself. We haven't gotten into any causes yet.
Right, we're not talking about a neutron flow. This was an electron flow. We know that it's an electron flow. It's not neutron.
Well, I meant the neutron stuff.
What came from behind was very extremely dense in electrons per cubic centimeter.
Yeah, what came from behind overwhelmed everything. The data was so strong coming in. They could oversample it like crazy, but it was still positive overwhelming data that kept streaming in and streaming in and streaming in. There's no way there was any kind of strange things happening with that data at that point, because the flux lines were almost absolutely perfect.
And I just want to make one small point, and then the floor is yours again, Causic. The data that we put out in that video we got that from not after the fact, when they would have had a chance to, like you say, go back and edit the images. I don't think NASA was expecting this event at all. And that's why there's a lot of people out there that did catch this video and the footage and the data, but then it went down. And then we went back and looked, and we can't find it. We can't find it. Well, everything that we have reconstructed was while their pants were down. Does that make sense? We did. No. We got the original data before the sites went down and before you put in those timestamps, like in the simulations and stuff, and you go back and you try to find, and those timestamps are gone.
Yeah.
We've got the data.
Yeah, we actually have the timestamps that pick up the event perfectly.
I'm saying we didn't go back and grab those images that could have been manipulated 5-10 days later. The images we got, and a lot were sent to us by anonymous sources who wanted us to put that data back together. They captured the data during the event, before they had a chance to edit it.
Exactly.
Well, actually, let me go ahead, Keith, because I
was just basically going to throw in what. I was just basically going to
throw in. Talk about after Keith, before just Keith. After you're done talking, I want to explain to you the technical side. I'm in the IT industry. I know Relic. You know a lot about it, and Tim does too, and so does Mike, and Keith does as well. But I'm in the IT industry. After Keith's done talking, I want to tell you about what real-time diagrams, how they work.
Yeah, that's
perfect.
Yeah, that's fine.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to make sure that you knew exactly where our reconstructed data came from.
I'm right on your page. I know exactly how you did it. Go ahead.
Well, can I just ask you, Alex? I know you said this has come from anonymous sources, and obviously they want to remain anonymous, but I just wonder, are we talking about people, well, dare I say, essentially like us, that can monitor some of these sites and record it? Or do these people that have sent you this data, do they have any distinct theories themselves upon what might have triggered this? Because if it's not a celestial event outside, what I'd be immediately looking at is some sort of ground stations. I'd be looking at HARP-type stations, and I know I'm just throwing in the word HARP, but I'd be looking at some of the energetic facilities, the covert military ones on the Earth, which do have the potential to interact with our Earth's energetic fields. And I'm just kind of wondering if it's not possibly an external event, is it an internal one? And these people, I understand they want to remain anonymous, but have they ever passed along, other than the data, any possible theories as to what they think this could have been?
Yeah, this is Tim. I would think they would probably look at stuff like that. That's something that could possibly affect that. But the HARP station works in megawatts, large amounts of power, megawatts. But the electron stream that came from out there somewhere in the cosmos was in wattage beyond comprehension. I don't believe for 1 second that HARP could have paid their electric bill and boosted their power to maximum.
Choose your side. Join the battle. Star Wars, the Old Republic. Rated T.
Maximum, and they wouldn't even put a dot on the radar screen compared to the power flow we saw coming from the cosmos going to the sun. I mean, it literally made our Earth irrelevant at that point. Like I was saying before, it neutralized our magnetic field. And our magnetic field is much stronger than HARP. So I would think HARP would play no role whatsoever. That's my opinion.
I'd have to agree. I'm going to give Causic his platform.
I'm sorry.
Really good point.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Keith.
I was just saying, I realize that HARP as a device, but the point is resonance can achieve anything. The idea is of you're dealing with a system which is what scientists refer to as a coefficient of performance greater than 1. In other words, your device has a measure of energy that you use to interact with a system. Your interaction taps into a reservoir of energy which is vastly greater and which can even flow back into your system to destroy it. And this is how you engineer things like nuclear weapons based upon the celestial patterns of the solar system. And this is how earthquakes are transferred as well. Between planets, essentially, via matter transfer. It's the power of resonance. You as the operator may input a certain measure of power, but what you get back in return can just go the scale.
Right. Now I could...
What he's talking about right now is called reverberation. And it's a very basic scientific term. The idea is that it starts out, the resonation starts out after it hits the Earth, it reflects back. Now, when it hits the Earth, it does it in a very large, spread out pattern. But when it comes back up into the atmosphere, it condenses into a very tight little knit. And that's a very important aspect, reverberation, for what I'm about to tell you here in just a few minutes. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah,
you were about to say something.
Yeah, let me say something, too, about HARP. What I know about electronics and stuff too. I think if HARP had any interaction with this electron flow that we saw out there, this massive electron flow with wattage beyond comprehension, I think if HARP would have synchronized with that field stream in any way, shape, or form, it probably would have blown HARP off the face of the Earth, because that power would have synced up with HARP's polarity on their scale, and it would have probably taken HARP off the planet. It probably would have melted HARP. It would have vaporized it instantaneously the moment it synced with that electron flow.
You would be 100% correct, Tim, except for you're not talking about one single transmission from HARP. A lot of people think that there's only one HARP station, in Alaska somewhere. That's not true. That there's 244 different substations worldwide.
I understand that, but I'm just saying if HARP would have synced up with that electron flow on any station on the planet, I know where all the stations are myself too, if they would have synced up with that in any way, shape, or form to cause a current flow into the HARP transmitter or into the HARP antenna array, it would have vaporized it in the blink, faster than the blink of an eye. It would have taken it out completely.
Right. Well, first of all, I don't think that HARP had a lot to do with it, but I will add credence to what Keith just said and tell you that our radio signals have been transmitted all through from the time that we started doing radio signals. It's been estimated by scientists that those radio signals have reached the outer edges of our galaxy and far beyond. So those absolutely radio signals can, in fact, penetrate deep space. But that has nothing at all to do with why I'm telling you that I think that this happened. And the reason I think this happened this way is not because I'm an expert at this, but because I have 4 heliophysicists in my group, one of which writes the textbooks for the people who are learning how to do it and have been for the last 14 years. So I believe them when they tell me what happened here. For instance, when you say it's never happened before, it has. And they say, well, it's common practice. No, it's not a common practice. It's common, but it's only common in the construct of understanding how solar maximum works. Now, listen, solar maximum happens every once in 11 years. You guys agree with that? Of course, I know you do. So when you say common during solar maximum, that would be if it happened 3 times in 35 years. That would be common for this particular type of event. Now, to you and me as laymen, or the people listening, they might think, well, 3 times in 33 years, that's rare. Or now, if you've never looked at the sun before, have you been looking at the sun for 33 years? I know I haven't been. So this is the first time I've ever seen it.
Right. I agree with that. We haven't been looking at it. We haven't had the technology.
So most people say,
yeah, we haven't had the technology to look at it that long on the scale that we're looking
at
that's
now. Sorry.
Go ahead, Ron.
Sometimes audio drops, and I think somebody's done talking. I'm not trying to step on anybody. It's just, the lag issue. But, that's what's going to make it so hard to come to a conclusion is, number one, we didn't even have the instruments to see this stuff until like the past 15 years. And, if this is a common occurrence in the realm of, not many times a year, like Causic said, but, maybe a few times a century or every few decades, this is where it's going to get very hard. It's going to take a lot of research to nail this down.
Yeah,
and
they're seeing stuff they've never seen before, too. Yeah, the science.
Actually, it's pretty simple. Let me explain to you. You know what? There's huge lag going on, and I turned off all my resources, and the only thing I have running is Skype right now. I think this live stream is really buggy. It's causing you guys to have a lot of lag right now.
Yeah, Skype has its little bugs there. I'm not running my fiber on full bore here, so we're dependent on the weakest link in the room here. Go ahead, Keith. Keith's up.
We're just going to throw something in. I know while you were talking there, I was just actually considering the energy effects of these, of what energy would be required to flip the field. I just had to run across, I had a copy of my own book just at corner, and I cited a table. This is a table. I wish I'd got the link to hand, because I think this is on the internet, but I just wanted to actually give you a bit of a table, just read out just 3 values here. And this is actually talking about Richter scale magnitudes of earthquakes, right? And it's an exponential scale. For each point of increase, it's like times 32. Well, just to give you an indication here, a 9.0 earthquake is 32,000 tons of TNT equivalent, right? And that is actually equivalent to the Chile earthquake of 1960, yeah? Now, right. A 10.0 Richter scale magnitude, this is, again, it's quite this table, it says it's 1 trillion tons of TNT. And then it says, there's a description, San Andreas fault type circling the Earth. And then it goes on to a bit of a more theoretical, even greater. It says, Richter scale magnitude 12.0 is 160 trillion tons of TNT. And it says, fault Earth in half through center, or Earth's daily receipt of solar energy. Now, that kind of thing there, just striking. And I know I just mentioned happy myself, and there are things I'm thinking about here which I've not really mentioned. I know HARP's an obvious point, but I'm really thinking about the work of like Thomas Bearden and some of these very covert Scala facilities, especially developed by the Soviet Union, facilities which can, transmit forces of like nuclear explosions through hyperspatial portals. I know that's going way off the chart, and a lot of people may not be familiar with that. But the point is, I'm trying to say is, we are talking about networks of things which interact in an energetic way, and the user as an operator can put in a small amount of energy and get back a certain measure which is vastly increased. And if you even look at some of the Bernard Eastlund patents, Bernard Eastlund himself for the HARP facility, he said that if HARP were like fully on for like 1 hour, radiating out its energy, it would be the equivalent of a hydrogen bomb, which is like a nuclear bomb. But again, I know that seems very small, because when you think about the Soviet Union, their largest bomb they developed and detonated was the bomb in 1961 called it Tsar Bomber, which means king of bombs. That was 58 megatons. Now, as an equivalent to that, right, a 9.0 earthquake is 32,000 megatons. Now, as destructive as Tsar Bomber was as a surface test, it's a good job earthquakes are kept and contained well underground, because their forces are so much greater. And most earthquakes, even high magnitude ones, although triggered by celestial patterns, they are not triggered usually by conjunctions, because when a conjunction is involved of a highly accurate nature, and we're talking transit level events here, they can go off the chart if they involve multiple bodies. And again, I'd have to end up referencing the ancient mythologies that talk about these very events, such as Berossus, end-of-age events. I know that might be going off topic, but I'm just saying that we do seem to be living in an age when there are people talking about the most extreme things potentially happening in the very immediate future. And they are talking about possible events of great catastrophe, whether we're talking about something like massive earthquakes or some solar event, something associated with the sun. There's indications and a lot of events, especially in the geopolitical, realm, which tie into that as well. So again, I want to turn over the floor. I don't want to hog the mic or anything, but I think I was just curious about what the potentiality for the energetic scene, what kind of energy would be required to reverse this thing, and how does that play out to say some of the values that I've just read out? Especially like a 12.0 earthquake.
Right, it's incredible energy.
The Earth's receipt of solar energy in one day. So I'll just turn it over to you.
Yeah,
okay.
This is Tim again. Let me make a quick comment once more about HAARP. I believe that HAARP might have played a minute role because Relic was telling me that he was looking at the HAARP, what was it, the magnometer or whatever, their graph on HAARP there. I forget exactly what it was, but Relic was looking at some spikes on HAARP, I believe, during this event or after it or something like that. I believe HAARP could have been used in a neutral fashion to sync up with this electron flow so they could take a look at this electron flow and measure some kind of a force coming from it. They might have been looking at it in an observatory manner instead of an interactive manner, if you get where I'm coming from there. Because
using HAARP as an instrument, as a microscope or a magnetoscope.
Exactly. To sync up with it and look at it and analyze it instead of being a power source to this event that happened. Does that make any sense to anybody? Good. Causic, you have any comment?
Yeah, he's gonna present some things. He, I think now we're getting into, okay, we kind of know what happened, and now we need to start looking for suspects. So right. I'll let him make his point, and then I've got data I'd like to present too.
Yeah, we'll get back on the topic that you and I talked about that we discussed after Causic's comments. So we need to jump back on that track again to take it out of the box again that way. And if you guys could stand by for a couple of seconds, I got a 513 call coming in. I don't think you guys can hear it. I'm not going to add it to the chat room. I'm going to take the call, see who's calling in, get their comments if you don't mind. When you hear my voice back in here, you'll know I'm back with you. I'll let you know when I'm back, okay? Is that fine with you guys? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody in the conference room, stand by just for a few minutes.
Well, if you read the text, I think I know who that might be.
Okay, well, I'm going to answer it and find out who it is, and we'll take this call, and then I'll get right back with the conference room here. Okay, 513, go ahead, you're on the air. Maybe they're not.
Well, let me tell you a few things.
Go ahead, guys. They hung up. Whoever it was, 513, we'll try to pick up that call here in a couple minutes. We'll get back to the conference call here. Go ahead, Causic.
Yeah, because we need to go ahead and get to some suspects.
Right. Let me go back and talk just a few more technical things. Somebody's mic is reverberating. Reverberation right here. Echo. Tim, I think your mic is hot.
My mic's off, Causic. Okay. I popped my mic down. My mic's off. Go ahead.
Okay. What I think is going on here, I'm hearing an echo. You guys can't hear the echo? Okay, that's fine. Listen, first of all, we have to talk about how the Earth moves around. The whole solar system turns. It doesn't turn on a two-dimensional plane. It turns on more like a cyclone. You know what I mean? The Earth and all the planets, they move on a cyclone. Look at the sun and look at all the planets and how they move. They move on like a cone, a cyclone, okay? Now, that's important because when you're looking at solar wind that comes from the sun, if you take a garden hose, if you're out in your garden, and you take a garden hose and put it on a tight stream, then you do a circular motion, clockwise or counterclockwise, whatever. And then you look at, as the water moves out into your yard on the far side, you'll see how it spreads out, spreads out, spreads out. That's how solar wind works, exactly the same way. Now, when you're looking at these diagrams that show how, you'll see solar wind is different from CMEs, right? CMEs come out like flares, they flare out, they kind of cone out, and then they hit, whatever they're hitting. But solar wind comes out like these cones, these bent cones that go counterclockwise. You guys have seen that a lot of times, right?
Oh, exactly. Keep going.
So you have these giant cone-shaped solar winds, just like you're taking a garden hose and just spraying it around in a big circle in your front yard. And then it's real tight at the sun, and then kind of spans out, but it's being pulled counterclockwise. And so what happened was we had a massive, coronal hole at the same time that we had two CMEs that caused, one CME was direct facing the Earth, and it was big, and it was very complex, and it was slow. And then later, we had a smaller CME that was glancing, and it was less complex, and therefore it was very fast. It caught up at the same time that the big one hit the Earth. The next one came, and it was a glancing blow. And if you look at those fans, you know what I mean, those fans like an umbrella. So the fan of the one that was the umbrella that was, face fronting the Earth. If you look at that, like if I'm looking from the sun to the Earth, and I'm looking at that first CME as an umbrella, a cone, kind of like a half crescent, whatever else. When you look at that solar particulate as it comes towards the Earth, those charged particles as it comes towards the Earth, then if you look at the right-hand side, that second CME, which was a glancing blow, caught up with it. Now, that second CME that caught up with the first one, which was more complex and more damaging, more charged, the second one was less damaging, but it caught up with the first one. And it intersected with that at exactly the same time that those CMEs were crossing through the Earth's magnetosphere. Now, here's what happened, from what I'm told, okay? That second CME, because it had momentum and the charged particles that hit it on that big CME that was face fronting, on the right-hand side, it created a whirlpool. Now, you took like in a tub of water, and you took one finger and hit it into the water. It would create ripples. And then just a few seconds later, took your other finger and hit it a little bit off to the right, a little harder, a lot harder. What would happen is when you look at those ripples, if you did it right, you would see a whirlpool that would develop. You see, in this particular case on the right-hand side, of our Earth, if you're looking from the sun down at this diagram, where the sun's in the middle, and then you see these spirals of solar stream that's going from counterclockwise. At the very same time, all this is timing. You've got that face fronting CME. You've got this glancing blow CME that's faster. They reached each other at the same time on the edge, and they created these vortexes. Now, what is solar stream? Pretty much, for the lay point of view, it's charged particles. What is a vortex? A vortex is a whirlpool, basically. And during a whirlpool, what you get is accumulation, a condensing. Now, when you add what the magnetosphere is and the magnetopause takes that stuff, stretches it out like a rubber band on the backside of the Earth until it torques like a rubber band. And then those particles condense even further. So what we saw there was a solar coronal hole interjecting at the same time as the events I just described. So exasperating the issue even more with more charged particles that hit it at the same time. So what ended up happening was that we saw a massive amount of charged particles on the backside, right? Because we're moving at roughly 67 miles an hour. way back there, we had this massive torque of charged particles that snap, like they always do, space quake theory, and then hit the Earth. Now, then there's reverberation, which is where you get the long elongation of that event. The elongation of that event was because it hit the Earth, it hit the magnetosphere, it hit the Earth, it hit the magnetosphere, and continued. Now, forget about the instrumentation because that's a whole different rabbit hole. What we're looking at here is a massive amount of charged particles that hit the backside, overwhelmed the instrumentation. They took it down because we don't have sats facing the backside of our planet to look at these particular issues. And as you know, when the data comes through to the front side, on the satellites that are looking front side, they don't know how to interpret it because it doesn't happen, very often. They didn't program, and they put those satellites up, before they took this into consideration. So everybody says, well, wait a minute, I'm looking at NASA, I'm looking at these satellites, and we saw a massive reversal. No, we didn't.
May I ask exactly which satellites are you referring to?
Well, when you're looking at SOHO and SODO, when you're looking at ACE, GOES, they're looking at what the weather patterns. They're looking at the reverberation. They're looking at the magnetopause, the magnetosphere. They're looking at CMEs. They're looking at solar winds. But they're taking all that information and putting it on their what they call real-time, diagram. The diagram is not real time. It's a computer model.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna have to interject here real quick. We got about 35 minutes left in the show. Relic and I want to
prevent some evidence, but where you want to go, Tim?
I was just going to say that we got about 35 minutes to go. We'll take it to the top of the hour. You're listening to the Truth Seekers Research Network Room here on Paltalk, and we're streaming live on Ustream. Thank you, Ustream. Thank you, Paltalk. I'd just like to give a great big plug for Paltalk. I think it's the world's greatest chat program, and I adore Ustream for their massive servers they have over there. So I want to give them both a kudo. So we got about 35 more minutes here, and Relic and I want to talk about this way out theory that we have now, if you don't mind. Yeah, but Keith, that's very interesting. What you said, I'm picturing this in my mind, and we will follow up with that. That's very interesting. I appreciate your input immensely. I've never heard of a SODO satellite. Could you expand on a SODO? We know SOHO, but I've never heard of SODO. So if you could let us know what the SODO is, that'd be greatly appreciated, because I don't know all the satellite names out there. There's a bunch of them orbiting the Earth. There's polar satellites, there's geosync satellites. There's a whole bunch of satellites out there, but I've never heard of SODO. So if you could bring me up to speed on SODO real quick, and then Relic and I are going to take it away.
I think he was saying that he was referring to SOHO, but
okay, yeah,
I just wanted to bring up one point that I think Causic, I think you might have missed it. I was agreeing with a lot of what you said, but I had some disagreements with some stuff that you said regarding the satellites and what is measured. SOHO and stereo A and B and some of those other satellites, they're farther out in space. One's ahead of each other, one's behind. These are between the Earth and the Sun. Now, when you're talking about GOES 11 and GOES 13, those are they're inside our magnetopause. Now, there are a few other. In fact, there was a South Korean one trailing the GOES satellites that was lost last year during one of the big solar flares. And I know that there's a few more, probably from the ESA and probably from one or two other space agencies from other countries. And NASA may also have another one up there that assists in the data capturing. But the ones inside the magnetosphere that provide us with the real time, they are in a continuous orbit. They are all, some are ahead of each other, some are behind each other. So what I'm saying is the backside, the dark side, and the sun side of the Earth are constantly being monitored. And in some past extreme, like in X flares that we saw near the end of last year, I did see those instruments pick up some heavy compression. Mike, you may remember this, and I know Delta remembers. During a few of those X flares near the end of 2011, you remember when we seen the plasma really light up on the backside simultaneously? It wasn't a reversal, but we've seen a lot of atmospheric heating and compression on the backside that was kind of new to us. Do you remember that?
Repeat that again, Relic. I think I know what you're talking about, but get a little deeper.
Well, I was just saying, during past extreme solar events, we have seen extreme temperatures detected by those satellites that do measure the backside of the Earth within the magnetosphere. Now, I'm not talking about SOHO and Stereo A and B that are between the Earth and the Sun. They're way farther out, and they are outside of the bubble that is our magnetosphere. But when you're talking about the ones that feed us the real-time magnetosphere data, there's more than just GOES 13 and GOES 11. And they do monitor front and back. And we have seen high ionospheric temperatures and compression on the backside, but we've never seen this flip. And we've never seen this 28 hours of extreme. I mean, extreme is not the word for it. The amount.
It's mind-boggling. It's almost.
I can't even wrap my head around that much. That many electrons packed into that much space.
I've never seen anything like that in my entire life. It was like we was looking down a conductor, literally seeing electron flow with our own bare eyes. It was absolutely phenomenal. And somebody,
you know what it reminds me of?
And Bugs just put something in the room. He said God's hand. That's a good segue into what we're going to talk about here in a second. Go ahead, Mike.
It reminds me of, I don't know how many people's ever watched it, but I've watched a lot of videos and done a lot of research on sonic booms. And if you'll ever watch a jet or something, any kind of a plane or anything that gets past the sonic level, you'll see something come in and form behind this object, whatever it is, be a jet fighter, and it creates the sonic boom. That's what kind of reminds me of what took place on that event that we keep talking about here.
Yeah, actually what you're looking at when you talk about a sonic boom like that, you're looking at a pressure wave in front of the aircraft. It's not actually behind it. They're breaking that. You actually see a pressure wave. They bust through that pressure wave. That's what you're talking about there. Because speed only travels at a certain about 720 miles an hour, give or take a few miles an hour, like that, when you reach Mach 1, and then you break that barrier. But I see where you're going with that.
Okay, it's actually in front of it. Now, let's just look at the sun. The sun was doing this to the planet Earth coming from the sun side. But the event took place on the backside. That's what you see with the jet airplane. I'm just trying to give people some kind of an analogy of how I seen this happen.
That's a good way to look at it. That's a very good way to look at it. It could be some kind of a pressure wave like that. That's very good. I've never thought about that.
Yeah, that's my analogy. That's the way I think of it. That's what it reminds me, because when you're looking at a jet fighter, that when it breaks that sonic barrier, the event happens behind the jet. It starts at the front and then it goes to the back of it. It just in real fast like it, but that's what it looks like it takes its place right there.
You're looking at a visualization of the.
We want to kind of look at.
I'm sorry, Relic. We must have light here. I was just going to tell Mike that we're actually looking at that pressure wave when you see it behind the aircraft like that. So.
And that's just my analogy of it, Tim. That's the way I'm kind of thinking and visualizing this in my brain.
That's a very, very good idea. I never even gave that a thought, because it could be some kind of a pressure wave like that, very similar to that. That's excellent. Thank you.
Well, I just look at it like it's something that's happened. Okay, what happened, I think, in my mind, the energy from the sun that we was getting from this coronal mass hole and all this solar winds, it kept coming towards the Earth for so long, so heavy, so fast, that it went to the back of the Earth, and then that's when the event went off. Boom! It just almost like, that's just the way I look at it. It's kind of a strange thing, and we haven't got down to go ahead and figure out what's going on. But Relic has some very good information on this. He's done a lot of research.
Can I just support what you just said, Mike? Can I support you before Relic? Just 1 second, because what you're talking about is absolutely.
Choose your side. Join the battle. Star Wars: The Old Republic. Rated T.
Absolutely correct.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to say we've got 28 minutes left to make our case, and this may get so deep that next Saturday we may do a show part 2 on the same topic, because I'm sure we're going to find out more during the course of this week. But I would just like to point out some evidence that, and this isn't just me. This is coming from a lot of sources, and I'll name some of those sources in a second. Anybody that's looking on Ustream right now, you see a gamma ray burst real-time sky map. This comes from Fermi LAT. They have a satellite that detects gamma ray burst, and these are people, 3 scientists. Actually, one has been the correspondent, but we've been in touch with them all week, and finding out what we can find out about gamma rays. And earlier, Causic brought up a good point. We're looking at things that happened at certain times and timestamps. Well, it just so happens that at 1607 UTC on March 12th, there was a gamma ray burst detected named GRB 2012-0312A.
Relic, do you see the graphic I got up on the Ustream right now of the satellite that picks up that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Now, in my initial investigation, when this first happened, I realized that this came from nearly directly behind the Earth. And so I immediately thought, okay, well, space is enormous. If I'm going to look for a suspicious object or a source in deep space, where in the hell do I start? And then I remembered that Saturn is in opposition on April 15th, which means it's going to be in line with the Earth and the Sun opposing the Sun. And Saturn moves very slow in its orbit around the Sun, so where it was at March 12th versus where it's going to be on the day of opposition, it's not that far away. So I thought, that gives me almost, it's like having a scope that's just slightly out of the line down a gun barrel. So I said, okay, let's take a look behind Saturn and see what's back there. I got a commercial coming on through Ustream, so I apologize if there's any audio that feeds through my mic. But for the ones of you that can still see the gamma ray map, the real-time map, it has coordinates there and it has the timestamp. This happened almost simultaneously with the first signs of reversal. Now, Tim, do you have the coordinate plots? Okay. Dead center, for the ones of you that can see this, this is where Fermi LAT picked up gamma ray burst 2012-0312A. They named it after the date that it was discovered, and the A means that it's a new object that was never cataloged before. They detected it at 1607 UTC, minutes before the first reversal. Now, if you look down in the lower right-hand corner, you see that blacked out area. That's been the discussion of a lot. That's been the topic of a lot of debate, conspiracy theories. That's the spot in Google Sky that's blacked out, and nobody really knows why. But there's a lot of crazy stories going on about that. Well, Saturn in its orbit is in that same area of sky. Now, I'm zoomed on the sky map. I'm zoomed all the way out. Now, realize if you were outside looking at Saturn and you were to hold out your thumb and put it up, where they detected that gamma ray burst, which is the circle in the middle, compared to where Saturn is at, if you held out your hand, it is only 2 thumbs width away. I've gone outside and looked. Now, considering how big the universe is, that's not very much of a deviation. I'll have to go back and look. I can't quite see the numbers, but I think it's only 2 or 3 arc hours to the left of Saturn. Now, I find that highly suspicious. We know it came from the backside. We know Saturn is in opposition to us. So Saturn is right on our 180 right now. It is at our 6 o'clock. If you think of the sun being dead ahead, and we know something hit us from behind, so you use Saturn as a line of sight and say, what's behind Saturn? What could have come from deep space that is in that area of space? And then you go look at the real sky, the real-time Fermi gamma ray burst sky map, and at nearly the same time, there's a gamma ray burst. How many people are scratching their heads right now? And does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Can I ask? I mean,
go ahead.
I'm just kind of wondering about. Are you still talking about the 12th of March date? Are you saying that Saturn was like behind, or rather behind the Earth, and we had a conjunction between the Sun, the Earth, and Saturn? Is that what you're saying?
The conjunction will not occur until April 15th. Saturn will be in opposition on April 15th, as I'm sure you're aware, Keith. And I've checked this out in several software suites. The Earth, the Sun, and Saturn will be in alignment that day with Saturn in opposition. That's why I chose Saturn as a reference point, just to give me an idea of where I should start my search. You know, if we're not coming to a conclusion, but we're saying, okay, if this was an opposing force from deep space, we know it came from behind. So when you go to a star, when you go into Google Sky or Stellarium or Starry Night, where do you begin to look? So we started looking around Saturn. Well, then we got a tip from Fermi. And lo and behold, on March 12th, minutes before the first reversal, they detected a gamma ray. The burst lasted for 12 seconds. They could not pinpoint the object of origin because by the time, what will happen is you have the gamma ray burst. It will illuminate to a certain luminosity. As soon as it's picked up, their observatories stop. It's all automated. There is no human intervention. They immediately turn to focus all of their attention on where that burst came from. Well, by the time they detected it and they swung their scopes around to try to see whatever light was left, it had already faded.
Right.
But they know that's where it came from.
Let me interject here real quick too, Relic. What was told by our source that works on the Fermi satellite project there, that after that gamma ray burst, it kind of fades and it goes through the other spectrums of light: infrared, ultraviolet, microwave, RF. It goes through the whole magnetic. It goes through the whole spectrum after that, so you can pick up that other type of energy coming this way after the gamma. Go ahead, Relic.
Obviously, because it was picked up by the satellite. Now, so my next question to her was, are the gravitational waves associated with these things? She replied, yes. Our ears perked up even more.
Exactly. Keyword, gravitational waves, folks.
Think of it as a being smacked on the beach by a tsunami. Okay, so another day goes by. Realize she's a busy person. She's got her studies to do. So my next question was, can the gravitational wave arrive before you detect the gamma ray burst? You know what the answer was? It can arrive up to 2 hours before and last after, much longer after the actual flash, the bang that the satellites detect, the gamma ray burst itself. That gravitational wave can precede, it can be in front of the light and the radiation that is detected. So is it so far-fetched to believe that Earth was caught in one enormous gravitational, magnetic, even a temporal wave? Temporal takes us to a whole new level, and maybe Tim can simplify that.
Yeah, I can. Here comes my way out of the box theory here.
This is where it gets out of the box, and some may not agree.
That's right. This is where Timmy kind of goes off on some wild thought pattern here. Okay? This is what a lot of people have been waiting to hear. We got about 15 minutes left, so here it goes. Hold on to your seats, strap yourself in, because you're probably going to start throwing tomatoes and everything else at me, because this is going to get bizarre now. We're going out into the bizarre realm now. Relic found out that it was an absolute fact from our scientist that he's been emailing and corresponding with, that gravitational wave could come out in front of that gamma blast. Okay, now that gravitational wave, we believe, changed our whole time and space continuum on this planet. That gravitational wave actually made our Earth stand still for a finite amount of time. We stood still, but we stood still. That goes back to my little 3-foot ruler deal here about time. You have to blink time out of your mind. Our Earth, let's say for the sake of argument, stood still for a second, 1 second. Most people wouldn't even recognize a second if our Earth just flat out stood still in space and time. And the reason it stood still in the space and time is, Relic can pick this up. This goes back to this gigantic electron conduit that was focused directly at our sun from someplace out in space that we still don't know where it came from. But we think, and here's the weird part, we think because of that triangle shape in that coronal hole that was on the sun, and this goes back to the Mayans dealing with pyramids. Now I'm going to get into this weird stuff now. That the sun created this triangle shape, telling something out in the cosmos, I'm sick, I need help. My batteries are getting low. My batteries are draining. I need to sustain life. I need to come back to some kind of a health, because if I don't, planet Earth is going to go bye-bye. Okay? Okay, so the sun sent out this TX, what we call a transmission, via a visual and via light, because we think everything communicates in space via light. We think every planet...
Or on a quantum level.
On a quantum level, yeah, that's right. We think every planet, every star, everything that's out there can communicate with one another. And that we're inside of something. We're inside of something out there. In our solar system, you can look at it as being one single atom inside of something. So this atom is communicating with the other atoms out there saying, look, man, I am sick. I need help. So our sun, which is a proton like in an atom, said, help, I'm dying. I need power. So here we go. Whatever is out there in the cosmos, and I'm not going to get super religious, but if there's a creator out there, which many of us believe, some of us don't, I believe the creator heard our sun saying help, which in turn created this massive power conduit, this massive power flow, and it come right by our planet, right directly into the sun, and recharged our sun back to a stable state. That's what
And what has the sun done ever since that event?
Right. What we've been watching the sun after the event. The sun seemed to calm down a little bit. We still have some solar flares. We still have what we would call a nominal sun going through its normal 11-year cycle, and the whole 9 yards. The sun's calmed down pretty nice. So we think that the sun communicated with whatever is out there and said, "Help me, I need help." And at that split second in time, whatever is out there set up a conduit of massive power flow beyond our comprehension and recharged our sun, because our sun sent that triangular signal, and it's a visual signal of some sort that I have no clue what it was or what it is, and I think it said recharge me. And I think we saw our sun, our life-giving force, being recharged. And the reason and let me say one more thing here real quick. I think when Relic and I was looking at the Earth, when this flip happened, this magnetosphere flip happened, and the Earth was kind of in a neutral state, we looked at that very hard, and it looked like all of our shields on this planet were down. That our shields that protect our Earth were down. Were completely down, left us totally vulnerable, because this force that came through wanted to set us aside and take care of us and make sure we was okay. And I think that while we was down, now this is the really weird part. Here comes the real freaked out part. I think our planet, as we know it, was completely destroyed. Completely destroyed, and we regenerated a brand new cell. Just like our body regenerates brand new cells all the time. We reproduce an exact copy of the cell. One cell dies, another exact copy is formed, but that copy is the cleansed copy. It's a perfect copy of our original cell, because it needs to be there to be part of the whole picture of this whole thing. So that's what we're thinking. I totally think that we were saved by the grace of God, by the grace of our Creator. Whatever saved us. Absolutely saved us, because we're a vital part in the makeup of everything we see out there. And we were charged, we was reborn, we're coming into a new age according to the Mayans. I'm going by the Mayans here. We're going into the sixth, what did you call it, Relic? The sixth?
They call it, well, it's not what I call it, they call it the sixth age.
The sixth age. We're going into an age of enlightenment. And
they also call it the rebirth of the sun. And they also called it the time of no time.
That's right. They call it the time of no time. They call it the birth of the sun, the rebirth of the sun. All of these little pieces to this puzzle all fit together. Why would the Mayans call it the rebirth of the sun? And all of a sudden we see this massive power flow come in and synchronize with our sun, and then all of a sudden it's all gone, everything's back to normal, and life goes on. So I think Keith had something to say. That's what I think happened, folks. That's my belief. I know it's stretching it way out there, but if you put all these pieces together with the triangle shapes, the pyramids, what the Mayans thought, because the Mayans had no technology like we did. They had lots of time to look at the stars and all the things that they looked at. They had an inner sense way above ours. They knew things and could see things way beyond what we can, because we're too consumed in everything around us now. They didn't have much around them at all, so they studied all this stuff immensely. And if you look at what the Mayans say and what the Mayans drew, all the pyramids and all of that stuff, we believe the pyramids have an integral role with communicating with whatever is out there. They are nodes that pick up energy from out there to let it know whether we're doing okay or not. And in time of need, you will see pyramid shapes all over the sky, all over everywhere. We've spotted pyramid shapes in the sky very near to where that gamma ray burst came from. I spotted it, I showed it to Relic, and we're both looking at it going, wow, there's another pyramid. How often do you see pyramids? Pretty strange. Anyway, go ahead, Relic, and Keith.
Well, I'd like to just make a short, I mean, your view of it and my view of it are kind of the same and kind of different. And I look at it as a possibility. I'd like to point out one thing. We don't have instrumentation to measure gravity. NASA has recently put up a probe. We have just now proved that Einstein was right about the fabric in space and time. That's the only gravitational instrument that we really have, but that does not really measure gravity. Gravity is something that we still have not figured out yet. So, yes, some of this is speculation, some of this is theory. I think that we did encounter some kind of gravitational wave, gravitational tsunami. There may have even been a temporal time element in that. But I think, Tim, where me and you see it a little differently, I see it more like, now I'm not saying this is what happened. I'm saying I'm just thinking out of the box, and when I look at this over and over and over again, the possibility pops in my mind, and let me say that again, possibility, because right now in these ages, I think anything is possible. That for a moment, well, actually for 28 hours, time outside our magnetosphere, while we were in that conduit, time came to a crawl. Time here on Earth, inside our little bubble, inside our magnetosphere, time went on, nobody noticed a dang thing. And the reason that makes sense to me is if we were defenseless at that time, there were no consequences. Well, if for all intents and purposes, everything in existence in temporal time outside of our little world, if that came to a crawl, it would have had no effect on us, would it? It's like Tim said, it's like we were protected by something divine that wrapped its arms around us and said, everything's going to be okay, ride it out. We didn't notice a thing happened. The coronal hole closes after that. Now, when Tim was talking about the communication, that's not to suggest that stellar objects have intelligence, but it's not impossible and inconceivable to say that they cannot have effects on each other, relationships with each other, and some form of communication with each other. What if everything we were taught about the sun is wrong? What if it's a lot of indoctrination? What if the sun, like any other power source, needs a charge once in a while? And what if, these are a lot of what ifs, I know. But, this is intended to get you thinking about these things and to quit thinking. It's to turn on your critical thinking skills. We're not expecting you to believe us or take this as fact, but look outside of the box and don't believe everything that the institutions from elementary to high school to college have indoctrinated you with. It is very possible that everything that we've been taught could be entirely wrong, partially wrong, or somewhere in between.
Really?
But I find it very conceivable that the sun could have needed that energy, and something divine answered that call.
Energy, mention that Ophiuchus real quick so I can play this clip right. We got a few minutes left here. I'd like to play that, how it's in relation, how it all fits together with the Mayans and Ophiuchus, I think they call it.
Go ahead and play it because I think it's pretty self-explanatory with everything that's been discussed over the past 3 hours.
Okay, is it the 1 or is it the 2? Do you remember?
It is the 2, and folks, this is another tip we were given by an anonymous researcher. They said, look at this. We think it's relevant, and this is from NASA Astrophysics.
And you're going to always hear that word come up whenever you study the Mayans or whenever you study space out there. This is real stuff. And I believe they pronounce it Ophiuchus, something like that.
I think so.
Okay, I'm going to play this here. You want to say something, Riley? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody that what you're about to hear is fact.
And I'd like to thank everybody for coming in the room. We are broadcasting on the network here on Paltalk.com and on Ustream.com. And if you missed any of the show, you can go to Ustream through our website, www.planetxresearch.com or .org. It will continue to play over and over again until our next show. It's on autopilot. It keeps playing and playing. So if you missed anything, if you find what we talked about pretty fascinating, please let other people know. And we always respect your input and your thoughts, because I'm not a scientist. Relic isn't a scientist. I don't think any of us are scientists. I don't have a PhD. All I do is observe things. I look at it in layman's terms. I try to look at it critically thinking and very basic. Here's the audio clip talking about Ophiuchus. Always remember that name, Ophiuchus.
A Breeze from the Stars, presented by Science at NASA. NASA spacecraft are monitoring an interstellar wind coming from the constellation Ophiuchus. December 16, 2004. Every year in early December, something happens that can throw your horoscope out of whack. The sun enters Ophiuchus, the little-known 13th house of the zodiac. You've probably heard of Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. The sun passes through these constellations one by one throughout the year. They're the ancient signs of the zodiac. But Ophiuchus? Modern astronomers don't divide the sky the same way ancient astronomers did. According to modern star maps, the sun cuts through a 13th constellation, Ophiuchus, the Serpent Bearer, between November 30th and December 17th. Astrologically speaking, if you were born between those dates, you're no longer a Sagittarian, you're an Ophiuchi. But that's another story. This story is about what really happens when the sun enters the zodiac's 13th house. An interstellar wind hits our planet. It's a helium-rich breeze from the stars, flowing into the solar system from the direction of Ophiuchus. The sun's gravity focuses the material into a cone, and Earth passes through it during the first weeks of December. We're inside the cone now. There's no danger to anyone on Earth, says space physicist George Glockler of the University of Maryland. The helium breeze is 1,000 billion times less dense than Earth's atmosphere.